Chapter 2101. The little radish sat beside Ning Shu, using its hand to support its chin. It looked at Ning Shu and said, "You better turn back, you are really too ugly like this. See, even a little monster knows how to be beautiful and ugly, even monsters like beautiful ones." Ning Shu said indifferently. "Didn't I tell you not to come here? After a period of time, people from the palace will come. If they see a ginseng that has turned into a spirit like you, they will definitely tear you apart." The little radish said with a frightened face. "Why do you keep grabbing onto me and not letting me go? Then why do you want to become a ginseng, and a ginseng that has turned into a spirit at that? If you eat it, you will become immortal." The little radish curled its lips and said, "There's no such thing, it's just that ginseng replenishes energy. If you eat it recklessly, you will lose your life. Who cares, as long as it's something good, it's fine. Who doesn't know that ginseng is a good thing? It can be used to make soup to nourish." Ning Shu casually said. The roots on the little radish's body began to tremble, and said to Ning Shu, "What are you doing here? You are not a human, don't tell me you want to become a monk. Follow me to the mountains are very comfortable. My Buddha nature is good, I was born for Buddha. If I don't become a monk, who will?" The little radish curled its lips. "If people know that you are a monster, no one will come to this temple to worship you. Humans and monsters are different," my mother said. "There is a boundary between monsters and humans. I have never dared to enter the territory of humans. If you go out like this, you will definitely be turned into soup." Ning Shu said. "Even if you are in the mountains, aren't there Taoist priests chasing after you? Why don't you become my wife, and follow me to the mountains? There is a bit of spiritual energy in the mountains, it is good for your cultivation as well. You are a peach blossom, I am a ginseng, we are a match made in heaven." The little radish said. Ning Shu. "Radish and ginseng, what will be born?" "There will be reproductive isolation, child. What's wrong with that? Wait until I transform, our child will definitely be of the plant type." The little radish said. Ning Shu, "Alright, hurry up and leave. Don't appear in front of others," Ning Shu said directly. He lay down on the bed and prepared to rest for a while. After going to so many places, even if she was a monster, she would still feel very tired. The little radish glanced at the sleeping Ning Shu, and asked, "Do you want me to pluck one for you to nourish your body?" With his back facing the little radish, Ning Shu waved his hand. "No need. I like how you're not greedy like this." Little radish said happily. Ning Shu. "Try putting a world's origin in front of me." The little radish said that it would come to find him at night, and then left. Ning Shu slept until it was time for dinner. The old monk, Huiji, came to knock on the door. Worrisome, so mischievous. Learning Buddhism was not like slacking off for 3 days and drying the net for 2 days. After eating dinner, Ning Shu expressed that he wanted to return to the meditation room to study Buddhism. The moment he returned to the room, as expected, he saw little radish rolling around on his bed. "Why are you here again?" Ning Shu frowned. Don't think that this little radish was small, it had already become a spirit. Although the ginseng looked like a little radish, it had already existed for God knows how many years. After all, it already had its own thoughts and the ability to speak. "Are you really not going to return to the mountain with me? I'll bring you to see my mother." The little radish said. "You saved me, my mother will definitely be very, very grateful to you." Ning Shu rolled his eyes, grabbed the little ginseng, and ran to the old monk, Huiji's meditation room. He said, "Master, how much can this ginseng be sold for?" Seeing the little radish struggling in Ning Shu's hands, Huiji chanted Amitabha and said, "It's a priceless treasure in the first place, it's not easy for it to form its own consciousness. Let it go back to the mountain." "Master, you're really a good person." The little radish said with tears in his eyes. Wuxia temple isn't so poor that we have to sell ginseng. Let it go, it will bring trouble to Wuyu Temple if it stays here. Old monk Huiji was worried that Ning Shu would think that the temple was short of money, and was prepared to sell this ginseng. They weren't so poor that they had to sell people. The little radish was frightened. Originally, he wanted to bring his wife back to the mountain, but in the end, his wife wanted to sell him. So scary, she ran away immediately. With such thick skin and guts, he still wants a wife. Ning Shu rolled his eyes. Do you plan to stay in Wuyu Temple, or go back to the mountain? I've thought about it, it's indeed not very convenient for you to stay in the temple. Why don't you stay in the peach garden, transform into your original form, and cultivate every day? Old monk Huiji felt that he was really worried sick. I'll think about it again. Her mission was completed, she was going to leave this world. As for what kind of life the person who entrusted her with the mission wanted, she had no right to interfere, nor did she want to interfere. Looking at the old monk whose beard and eyebrows were all white, she sat down and said, Master, please take care of your body, and strive to live another 150 years. I won't be able to live that long. Life and death are decreed by fate, riches and honor are determined by the heavens. Let's just follow the will of the heavens. The old monk said calmly. Ning Shu made an "oh" sound, and the atmosphere became quiet. To be able to meet the little monk twice was not often. After pondering for a moment, he asked, Master, were you handsome when you were young? Ning Shu originally wanted to ask his master directly, when you were young, have you ever been pounced on by wild bees and butterflies? Barely. Old monk Huiji's eyebrows twitched as he said. Then master, I'll be leaving. Take care to rest, staying up late will cause sudden death. Don't stay up late. Ning Shu said. Huiji. Go and rest. Huiji said. After thinking for a while, he took the Buddha beads in his hand and gave them to Ning Shu. Keep this with you. Ning Shu looked at the Buddha. Back then, Huiji had already given him a string of Buddha beads. There was a faint sound of Sanskrit on the Buddha beads that could not be invaded by gods and ghosts. Now, he gave him a string of Buddha beads. These things were all worn by Huiji, so they must have a great effect. The greatest effect was that they could calm one's heart and could ward off evil. Ning Shu refused and said, You don't have to give them to me. Master's things are all good. Leave them for the temple in the future. Then forget it. Huiji put the Buddha beads back on his wrist and said, Go and rest. Ning Shu nodded and walked to the door. He looked back at the old monk. He probably wouldn't see the old monk again in the future. Ning Shu smiled and said to the old monk, Master might have become a Buddha. They wouldn't have a chance to meet again. Huiji smiled and looked really kind. Ning Shu waved his hand, Go and rest. When Ning Shu left, he closed the door for the old monk. He returned to his room and laid on the bed. 2333's voice rang out in his mind, Quest completed, do you want to leave the quest world? Ning Shu thought about it and felt like he should leave. Unfortunately, he didn't find the source of the world. He nodded and said, Let's leave. Ning Shu's mind went dizzy and he appeared in the system space. Chapter 2102. When he returned to the system space, Ning Shu felt that his system space was really full. There was no place for him to stand. There was a coffee table, a bookshelf, a sofa, a fish tank, and a spirit spring pool. The space was small. It used to be empty, but now it felt very crowded. Seeing that, he felt uncomfortable and said to 2333, Can you expand the system space a little? I don't feel comfortable looking at it. It was too crowded. Ning Shu lay on the sofa and sighed comfortably. He took out a black flower and sniffed it. There was a warm feeling in his heart. There was a feeling of happiness. This bouquet of black flowers was given by His Excellency. He didn't know where these flowers grew. When would he grow some of these flowers to cultivate his mind and make himself happy? Can it be expanded? Ning Shu asked 2333. He felt that there were too many things in the system space, and it was too cramped. It can be expanded, but it needs energy. 2333 said. It needs your energy. Ning Shu saw 2333's hesitation and understood. That's right. 2333 said, my energy is enough to maintain the entire system space, but if you expand the system space, it might not be enough. Ning Shu was speechless. Ning Shu expressed his doubts about the lack of energy in the system space, but it didn't matter if he didn't expand it. He said directly, then there's no need to expand it. There were some things that Ning Shu didn't want to be too clear about. It was quite warm to look cramped like this. Ning Shu lay on the sofa and began to absorb the soul power this time. Although Tao Yao gave up all her soul power, her soul had been used up a lot. There shouldn't be much soul power left. Ning Shu absorbed for a while and then there was nothing left. There really wasn't much soul power left. Ning Shu raised his hand and stretched. He opened his attribute panel to see what he had gained this time. Name, Ning Shu. Age, 27 level, Super Mission Taker Points card, 199, 10 million points for 1 point card, Soul value, 13 health value, 12 wisdom, 14 luck, 15 charm, 9 spirit, 12 force, 14 aptitude, 14 faith, 2695980 merit, 1345161 soul strength, 71 authorization ticket, none pure heart, none law comprehended, water elemental law incarnation, construct a world, I suspect it is the world of samsara. Items, calming halo, calming pill, faith halo, amulet 4, upgraded amulet +2. Honorary titles, goddess of war, selfless ancestor skills, 5th ring shooting technique, intermediate fighting technique, intermediate level poison technique, beginner level business management knowledge, beginner level code programming, beginner level lawyer skill, sage ghost catching skill, beginner level cooking skill, intermediate level embroidery skill, trash hypnosis. Aura, mother of the world, queen's blessing, sister model worker, Chen Shi's blessing, leader aura, grass blessing, lifelong best friend, Miao Miao Miao's blessing. Healer of the dying, Zhu Sun Yang's blessing, founding woman, Chen Ermiai's blessing, beauty in law, Chen Ning's blessing, bane of the blood clan, Jasmine's blessing, communication between races, Bai San Yang's blessing, heart of the brave, Wang Ying's blessing, complete Tao Yao's wish, escape fate. Mission completion rate, 100%. Mission reward, 12 merit cards, 10 attribute points, 80% soul power, 5,000 faith power, including previous world's accumulation, 150 merit points, and an additional 500,000 merit points. Although there was 80% soul power, Tao Yao did not contribute much soul power, so this 80% soul power was not much. 150 merit points, Ning Shu felt that it was only enough for him to eat a snack. He had done a lot of good things, but he only had this little amount of merit points. If she did not have taxes, she would probably cry from accumulating merit points and faith power. Ning Shu added the attribute points. Name, Ning Shu. Age, 27 level, Super Mission Taker merit cards, 199 plus 12, 10 million for 1 merit card. Soul power, 13 plus 1 health points, 12 plus 1 wisdom, 14 plus 1 luck, 15 plus 1 charm, 9 plus 1 spiritual power, 12 plus 1 martial power, 14 plus 2 aptitude, 14 plus 2 faith power, 2695980 plus 5,000 merit points, 845,161 plus 150 soul power, 71 authorization ticket, none pure heart, none law comprehended, water law, incarnation of water law. Constructed world, suspected to be the world of reincarnation. Items, calm halo, tranquil pill, faith halo, amulet 4, upgraded amulet +2. Honorary titles, goddess of war, selfless ancestor skills, 5th ring shooting technique, intermediate fighting technique, intermediate level poison technique, beginner level business management knowledge, beginner level code programming, beginner level lawyer skill, sage ghost catching skill, beginner level cooking skill, intermediate level embroidery skill, trash hypnosis halo, mother of the world, queen's blessing, sister model worker, Qinshi's blessing, leader halo, grassa's blessing, best friend for life, Meow Meow Meow's blessing. Life-saving hand, Zhu Su's blessing, founding lady, Chen Ermiai's blessing, lawful lady, Chen Ning's blessing, bane of the blood clan, Jasmine's blessing, transcending race communication, Bai Sanyang's blessing, brave heart, Wang Ying's blessing. After adding the attribute points, Ning Shu asked Mei Ziqing's system about the incubation of the light and darkness attributes as usual. Mei Ziqing's system told Ning Shu that there were no changes. Ning Shu was speechless. He didn't know when they would be able to hatch. He hoped that when he found the world source of the water attribute, the light and darkness attributes would be able to hatch. Ning Shu wanted to throw the light and darkness attributes directly into the world source of martial arts, but they didn't hatch successfully. Ning Shu was afraid that if he threw them in, something abnormal would happen in his world. What if it turned out to be a deformed world? Haste makes waste. Let's wait slowly. There's plenty of time anyway. Ning Shu decided to patrol the city of water and strengthen the enchantment at the same time. Then, he would go to the auction house to see if there was any world source. When he thought of the auction house, he thought of Si Tian. When he thought of Si Tian, he thought of how Si Tian had cheated him of 500,000 merit points. When he thought of the 500,000 merit points, he thought of the fish tank of the law of nothingness in the corner. Ning Shu walked over and flicked the fish tank with his finger. In the end, he sighed. He didn't have the courage to jump in. If he did, he would most likely die. Irritating. Ning Shu was too lazy to think about it. He might as well not know about it. If he knew, he wouldn't be so conflicted about jumping in to commit suicide. When Ning Shu arrived at the City of Water, he first strengthened the enchantment. Then, he went to Shu Bai's restaurant and ordered some food. After eating slowly, he headed to the auction house. Si Tian's auction house was doing well. Those who could do business had connections and connections. Ning Shu felt that even if he started a business in the City of Water, he might not be able to do it. Chapter 2103. Si Tian managed the auction house well, and Ning Shu felt that the tax revenue she would receive next time would be even higher. Ning Shu paid the entrance fee and wandered around the auction house. Ning Shu asked the auction house's staff, "Where's the imperial advisor? I have something to talk to him about." The staff went to look for Si Tian. Ning Shu stood still and waited for Si Tian. Not long after, Si Tian came over and walked to Ning Shu. Ning Shu cupped his hands and said, "Si Tian greets the city lord." Ning Shu went straight to the point and asked, "Do you have the world's origin now?" Si Tian thought for a moment and said, "There seems to be a world's origin in the warehouse. The city lord wants the water attribute, right? That happens to be the water attribute. The water attribute world's origin." Ning Shu was very excited. After looking for the water attribute for so long, he finally found the world's origin. However, in the hands of Si Tian, Ning Shu felt that he might have to spend a lot of money this time. But now, he finally found it. Problems that could be solved with money were not problems. Ning Shu's heart was in turmoil. However, he looked calm on the surface. "I just happen to need a water attribute world's origin. Sell it to me." Ning Shu was still curious about what kind of form the water attribute existed in. Si Tian asked someone to go to the warehouse to get the world's origin. Then, he said to Ning Shu, "The city lord wants to look at other things. If you like them, Si Tian will give you a discount." Ning Shu only had the water attribute world's origin in his heart. how could he think about other things? Even if he wanted to, he would wait until he got the water attribute world's origin. Soon, the staff came over with a box. Si Tian took the box and said to Ning Shu, City Lord, this is the water attribute world's origin. Si Tian opened the box. Inside was a crystal clear bead. There seemed to be water flowing inside. Ding-dong sounds could be heard vaguely. It was actually a round bead, but it was a little big, about the size of a baby's fist. Ning Shu reached out and held the bead in his hand. Immediately, he felt an incomparably intimate feeling. Moreover, there was an endless amount of water inside. Although the bead was not big, there was a lot of water inside, and water droplets were seeping out of its surface. To be able to make her feel a sense of familiarity, it should be the water element. Ning Shu played with the water original bead in his hand. The water droplets oozing out of the bead were extremely cool. He asked carelessly, how much is this? Ning Shu was already prepared to be cheated, but if Si Tian wanted to raise the price from the ground, she could bargain as much as she wanted. Let's trade according to the market price. Si Tian seemed to have no intention of raising the price. Ning Shu's expression was indifferent as he asked, how much? 150,000 faith power, Si Tian said. Ning Shu almost threw the world origin bead directly at Si Tian's face. According to the market price, how could it be 150,000? Wasn't it between 50,000 and 100,000? Why did it suddenly cost 150,000? Ning Shu, hee, I'm suddenly so angry, but I have to maintain a smile. The market price of your house seems to be more expensive than the market price of other houses. Ning Shu raised his eyebrows and asked. Did she really look like a fool with a lot of money? Why did Si Tian catch her to take advantage of her alone? City Lord, the market price of various goods fluctuates. You can look at the screen. These are the market prices. Si Tian pointed at the screen on the wall. The screen showed the trading prices of various goods. Ning Shu saw that the price of the world origin bead was indeed different from before. It had almost tripled. Why did the price suddenly become so much more expensive? Ning Shu asked with some surprise. Ning Shu felt that his luck was not too good. He had just found these things, but the price had skyrocketed. Something must have happened in the higher-ups. The prices of various goods have fluctuated. There are fewer goods circulating in the market. The price can't meet the demand. Naturally, the price has increased. Ning Shu did not hear any news. Now that he heard Si Tian say this, he suddenly felt that something could have happened to a stable organization. Did something happen? Ning Shu asked Si Tian. Si Tian shook his head. I'm not too sure. However, there are fewer goods circulating in the market. Those goods must have been transferred away. Something must have happened. Ning Shu did not care about the 150,000 faith power. He definitely had to get the world origin. After bargaining with Si Tian for a while, Si Tian was not cheap at all. Moreover, Si Tian looked very confident. He did not seem to be worried that the things could not be sold. It was estimated that the goods on the market were really in short supply. There were only a few and not a lot. Ning Shu gave Si Tian 150,000 faith power and put away the water attribute world origin. Very good, all the world origin had been collected. All that was left was the light and darkness attribute world origin that Xiaohua had hatched. After obtaining the world origin, Ning Shu was very happy. He asked Si Tian, you are well informed. Do you know what happened in the higher-ups? To be honest, Ning Shu still did not want anything to happen to the organization. If it really fell apart, he did not know what would happen. The entire system would collapse and his taxes would be gone. This was a huge organization that involved all aspects. Si Tian shook his head and said, I'm not too sure. Ning Shu walked around the auction house and did not see anything that caught his eye. Now, he wanted to stuff the world origin into a peerless martial art. After coming out of the auction house, Ning Shu went to the shops in Water City to take a look. He found that there were fewer goods in these shops. Ning Shu asked the shop owner why there were no goods in stock. The shop owner said that there were fewer goods in stock recently. It should be said that there were no goods in stock. Ning Shu could not help but raise his eyebrows. What was the reason? Unable to find the answer, Ning Shu prepared to go to the consultation room to ask the silver-haired man. He took the initiative to ask the silver-haired man. Ning Shu walked to the door of the consultation room and walked in. Then, he waited for the silver-haired man to come out of the room. However, after waiting for a long time, the silver-haired man did not appear. He did not do business anymore. He did not want such a fat sheep that was sent to his door. In the end, Ning Shu saw a sign on the table. There were 4 words written on it: business suspended. The silver-haired man did not work anymore. Ning Shu also noticed that there was no agarwood in the room. It seemed that something had happened. Originally, he wanted to ask the silver-haired man to resolve his doubts. In the end, he did not appear. This feeling made Ning Shu a little uneasy. When the nest was overturned, no eggs would remain intact. Even if something had happened, he still hoped that it would pass quickly and be resolved quickly. Ning Shu returned to the system space and pulled out the peerless martial art from the bookshelf. Now, the peerless martial art had formed a space, but it was a useless space. Chapter 2104. Ning Shu held the water attribute direct source in one hand and the peerless martial art in the other. Then, she placed the bead inside the space. After a while, the peerless martial art began to emit water vapor, causing the entire space to become moist. If there was water, there would be life. He didn't know if his peerless martial art could evolve life. Ning Shu made a trace of the soul origin into the peerless martial art. He felt that he had more control over the peerless martial art. He had to slowly make the peerless martial art a part of himself. Otherwise, the things that he worked so hard to make would not be his. Ning Shu looked at his peerless martial art with a smile. It was like looking at a golden hen laying golden eggs. This was the world that Ning Shu looked forward to the most. A world that could evolve life. When there were living creatures in the world, there would be an endless stream of merit points. After all, creating a place for living creatures to live in was not a small amount of merit points. For example, the mission enforcers who built the world, and a world with living creatures, would receive a lot of merit points without doing anything every day. Of course, in order to build the world, there was no need to mention the hard work. Even if the world was built, there was no guarantee that it could evolve life. A space without life was useless. At most, it could be used to store things. The premise was that the world was built successfully and there were life. Only then would there be a lot of merit. There was no reward without effort. In order to build this world, Ning Shu could not eat well and could not sleep well. He was worried every day. Now, he just had to wait for the 2 world origins on Xiaohua's side. But how long would he have to wait for it to evolve into life? It might be a long process. He really wanted to feel the feeling of getting a lot of merit just by sitting and lying down. Ning Shu placed the origin of the world on the bookshelf. She stretched her body and said to 2333, "Did something big happen to the organization? Why are the prices of goods fluctuating so much? Will it affect me?" 2333 said, "Well, I don't know what exactly happened. But if the sky falls, there are tall people to hold it up. You are at the bottom of the middle level in the mission enforcers. You don't have to worry at all. If something really happens, there are people at the top who will take care of it." Ning Shu really wanted to roll his eyes. Why was 2333's comforting tone so annoying? Why did he have to belittle her? What's wrong with talking nicely? Didn't 2333 mean that she was just an ant? Even if something happened to her, she wouldn't be of any use. Sigh, my bad temper. I'm guessing that they've reduced the number of items on the market so that they can be used by the people who need them first, Ning Shu said. Ning Shu remembered that this organization seemed to have raised an army. He seemed to have seen Fragrant Wind Man once, and he was wearing a military uniform. What was the use of the army? Could it be that there was a riot somewhere? Alright, it seemed like she really wasn't in a position to care about these things. If something did happen, the tall man would take care of it. Ning Shu opened up the exchange store and saw that the prices of these items had doubled. It was the fasting pill. In the past, it could be bought for 3 pills, but now, it could only be bought for 1. No matter what happened to the organization, Ning Shu still hoped to be able to settle down. Although he would be obliterated at the slightest provocation, this organization was indeed something that mission enforcers relied on. Opportunities and dangers coexisted. Those who completed missions didn't even have the chance to reincarnate. They could only run forward, but they were able to transcend reincarnation. They didn't need to suffer the pain of reincarnation and could strengthen themselves. Ning Shu still had a sense of belonging to the organization. Although he hadn't figured out the organization's full face, it did give him a chance to start over. Even if he was cheated, he felt much better when he thought about the thousands of mission enforcers who were cheated. He was most afraid of the loneliness of only you didn't hand in your homework. He was the only one who was cheated. Ning Shu opened the system's chat system and opened the Law Incarnation group to see if there were any gossip. The group seemed to be discussing the price increase of items. Ning Shu knocked on Awan alone, but she didn't seem to be online and didn't respond. Suddenly, he felt that some people had disappeared. They must have been summoned by the organization. He didn't know what had happened. Ning Shu was scratching his heart and lungs. He wanted to know what had happened, but he felt that even if he knew, there was no way to solve it. He might as well not know and do what he needed to do. All kinds of items had decreased. He just didn't know if his next tax would be affected. Although there were fewer items, the price had doubled. His tax shouldn't be reduced. But some people wouldn't buy if the price was high. In the end, it still had an impact. Ding dong. The chat system rang. Someone had sent him a message. Ning Shu opened it and immediately felt that it was incomparably grand because it was the main system that sent him a message. The content of the message was, "How many soul stones are there?" Ning Shu was delighted. This meant that the soul power or soul origin in the soul stones could be purified. Then he would have additional soul power. It was simply awesome. However, Ning Shu's head cooled down after a moment of excitement. She hadn't even found a soul stone mine. How should he reply? Should he say that he didn't have a single strand of hair? Ning Shu deliberated and replied, "This kind of thing isn't easy to find. I don't have it on hand at the moment." The main system was silent for a long time. It was probably very busy. Ning Shu flicked his fingers back and forth a few times before replying, "When you have something, we'll contact you again." Then, the main system's contact information slowly disappeared from Ning Shu's chat system. Ning Shu was speechless. "You should have left a way to chat. If I found something, how could I contact you?" All of them seemed to be afraid that others would find out their contact information. What was the point of saying it and then disappearing? Therefore, he still had to go to the 9 Palace Mountain to look for a soul stone mine. The main system had come to ask her about the soul stone, which meant that the organization was probably fine and wouldn't fall apart like what Ning Shu had thought. Ning Shu took out some spirit liquid from the spirit spring. Then, he pointed his finger and a black hole appeared in front of him. Ning Shu walked into the black hole and disappeared from the system space. Ning Shu stood in front of the 9 Palace Mountain. He reached out his hand and placed it on the stone wall. He felt a strong suction force sucking him in. Ning Shu appeared in a square. He looked left and right. It was still the first level. He suddenly realized how difficult it was to climb to the 9th level. Ning Shu felt that it might take him a long time to climb to the 9th level. He had been circling around the first level. He didn't know if there were more soul stones on the first level or the second level. Chapter 2105. Ning Shu didn't have any other dreams right now. She wanted the soul stone mine to benefit from the main system. Then, she would have the soul power to do missions and the soul power inside the soul stone. DT top quality soul stones didn't just contain soul power, they also contained soul origin. Just thinking about it made her excited. But to find a soul stone mine was like finding a gold or silver mine, it wasn't easy at all. Most of them were owned by powerful people. Not to mention whether she could find a soul stone mine, she also had to consider whether she could protect it well. It was hard to guarantee that others wouldn't come to steal it. She had to be sure that she could beat others when it came to steal it. After all, 9 Palace Mountain was filled with disciples from ancient sections. None of them were weak. The main system only knew how to ask for things from her, but these things weren't easy to obtain. When the time came for cooperation, she had to take the lion's share of the profits. Ning Shu wandered around the plaza. There were living people in the plaza, as well as people with powerful souls. A world where people and souls coexisted was a bit rare. Ning Shu planned to buy some information to understand the situation of the soul stone mine. The city was very prosperous. There were all kinds of shops, weapons, and magic tools. There were magic tools that could harm souls, and magic tools that could absorb souls. Because of the existence of souls, magic tools were also developed in this direction. What if an enemy in a soul state appeared? Using weapons that could harm souls could defeat the enemy. What a lively world! Ning Shu was really envious of 9 Palace Mountain. It seemed like this 9 Palace Mountain was even better than the peerless martial arts she painstakingly created. After all, peerless martial arts didn't have its own rules and heavenly Tao. However, 9 Palace Mountain was already capable of absorbing drifting souls that were unconscious or in a state of chaos, forming a soul stone mine. Soul cultivators could not use spirit stones, but they could use soul stones to strengthen their souls. There was a balance between formation and consumption. Just this point alone made Ning Shu very envious. A truly mature plane or world's heavenly Tao would adjust things that happened in the plane. But Ning Shu still had a question. Since souls couldn't be reincarnated and could only be consumed in the world, then what about the babies that were born? Ning Shu was very sure that 9 Palace Mountain was not connected to the world of reincarnation, so it was impossible for a child to be born, but it was born. Could it be that the 9 Palace Mountain had a world of reincarnation? Ning Shu's face was expressionless. If that was really the case, she would have picked up such an amazing item. Ning Shu spent some spiritual liquids to buy some jade strips. The purchasing power of spiritual liquids was much higher than spirit stones. Its purity was also much higher, and it was also much easier to absorb. A bottle of spiritual liquid bought a bag of jade slips. Ning Shu found an inn and planned to check the contents of the jade slips one by one. Ning Shu wanted to know if there were any abnormalities in the existence of the soul stone mine or if there were any special characteristics. For example, the spiritual energy around the spirit stone mine was very dense. Could it be that the spirit stone mine was surrounded by a chilly wind or a pit filled with tens of thousands of people? Ning Shu used his consciousness to scan the contents of the jade slip one by one. After reading it, he summarized the contents of the jade slip. It said that soul stone mines were most often formed in deep mountains and wild forests, and most of them were places with miasma. The places where soul stones were formed were indeed sinister, and some of the soul stone mines could not be mined. Things like miasma were not a big deal to cultivators, and could be solved with a pill. Some soul stone mines had a type of wind, and this wind could blow away souls. Even a living person's soul could be blown away, and they would become the living dead. Mining the mines required a lot of people, and some of them were people with low cultivation. This kind of mine was not easy to mine, and some people gave up. Ning Shu saw some unmined soul stone mines on the map, and immediately smiled. He thought that he would have to look for them himself, but now there were ready-made ones. The prerequisite was that he could survive. Who wouldn't want good things? These unmined soul stone mines must be very powerful, or else they would not have been left unmined until now. Moreover, these places were all listed as dead places. For powerful cultivators, these places were all dead places, and ordinary people would probably be blown to death by the wind. Ning Shu kept the jade slip and prepared to take a look. The prerequisite was that he had to protect himself. The things were good, but his life was more important. Ning Shu planned to take a look. If he had the conditions to mine, he would definitely mine. If he couldn't, he would look for another one. After all, the world was very big. What Ning Shu did not expect was that this world was divided into several continents. Ning Shu's heart ached again. He thought about how tired he was to build this world, but he did not expect that the Nine-Palace Mountain would naturally form a world. It had probably existed for a long time, and her peerless martial arts had only existed for a few hundred years. No. Ning Shu went to the place marked on the jade slip. After flying for a while, he arrived at a huge mountain range. This mountain range was not primitive, and towering trees covered the sky. Fallen leaves fell to the ground, and they rotted together with the corpses of insects and beasts, forming a miasma. The entire mountain range seemed to be enveloped in a sea of fog, and it was a black fog. In this situation, if it was a normal person, they would definitely be poisoned to death by the miasma. It did not affect cultivators much, but the astral winds were powerful. Ning Shu felt that this world was following the wind. There were wind blades, and now there was wind that could destroy souls. Wind was truly a terrifying thing. As Ning Shu flew, he used his mental energy to scan the situation below. The miasma below was even thicker, but this world was big enough. If the miasma was blown everywhere, normal people would be poisoned to death. The mountain range was deathly silent, and there were also wild beasts. However, these wild beasts had adapted to the miasma, and when they opened their mouths, a foul miasma would spurt out. Sensing that someone had invaded, they all raised their heads to look at the sky. Ning Shu hurriedly flew higher. If he flew lower, even if he was a soul, he could feel that the miasma had an effect on his soul. After flying for a while, he still had not reached the place marked on the jade slip. It would be difficult for normal cultivators with low cultivation to mine the soul stone mine under such circumstances. As he got closer and closer to the soul stone mine, Ning Shu heard the howling of the wind. It brought with it a cold feeling that blew on his body, causing his soul to feel as if it was about to freeze. If he smashed it with a hammer, his soul would be split into several pieces. This feeling made Ning Shu not dare to continue forward. He had a bad premonition. After experiencing so many dangers, he had a certain premonition and sense of danger. /HTML/book/39/39163/L Chapter 2106. No wonder the soul stone mine wasn't mined yet. She wasn't even close to the soul stone mine yet. She couldn't imagine what would happen if she got closer. It wasn't easy to pick up scraps. Since it wasn't mined yet, it must be extremely dangerous. Ning Shu was a little hesitant. Should she go over? Wealth came from danger, but it was too dangerous. If she didn't even have her life, she wouldn't be able to enjoy any wealth. Nothing was more important than her life. Ning Shu pointed her finger and a water barrier appeared in front of her. Ning Shu was like a round bubble. Ning Shu slowly walked towards the Soul Stone mine. The closer she got to the Soul Stone mine, the stronger the wind. Ning Shu felt that her water bubble was about to be blown apart by the wind. Ning Shu felt that her entire body was frozen. She didn't have a body and was only in a soul state, but she was so cold that her brain was confused. Even her thoughts were slowed down. It was so cold that her brain couldn't think. What kind of wind was this? The world was so big that it existed everywhere. Ning Shu knew that she wasn't very knowledgeable, but she was still shocked by this wind. It directly targeted the soul. Ning Shu kept strengthening her water barrier, hoping to resist the attack of the cold wind. As she got closer to the Soul Stone mine, she felt even colder. Ning Shu couldn't help but hug her arms. I can't hold on any longer. Should I retreat? Ning Shu felt that it was a little difficult and she was a little scared. Ning Shu decisively retreated. She believed in her own feelings. Ning Shu pointed her finger and a black hole appeared in front of her. Then, she quickly jumped into the black hole and appeared outside Nine Palace Mountain. Ning Shu looked at the gloomy world and sighed. Sure enough, the Soul Stone mine was not that easy to obtain. There was no way to mine the Soul Stone mine. It was such a difficult mining process. No matter what, she had to take the biggest share. This mine definitely couldn't be mined. That was why it was left until now. Ning Shu returned to the system space. Her whole body was cold. She wanted to find a fire to warm herself up. She laid on the sofa and sighed. If there was no way to mine the mineral deposit, then she would have to search the entire world for a soul stone mine. This method of searching was no different from looking for a needle in a haystack. Ning Shu realized that if he really wanted to obtain a soul stone mine, he could only mine such a vein. Ning Shu's teeth were chattering. He had not felt so cold in a long time. After his soul warmed up a bit, Ning Shu let out a sigh. He looked at the pool of spirit spring water. Besides opening up a spirit stone mine, was there any other way? For example, exchanging spirit spring water for spirit stones? Why did he have to use such a dangerous method to mine soul stones? It was dangerous and laborious. But before that, Ning Shu needed to test one thing. Ning Shu looked at the water tank in the corner and then carried it into the black hole. 2333 called out to Ning Shu, "What are you doing? Didn't you say that this thing can assimilate a lot of things? I'll put it next to the mine and see if it can assimilate the wind." She bought it for 500,000 merit points. She felt very depressed when she saw it in the corner collecting dust. She couldn't even raise a fish. Ning Shu entered the black hole and carried the fish tank into the Nine Palace Mountain. He then walked towards the mine. Although Ning Shu was wrapped in a thick water barrier, he still felt very cold. Moreover, the power of his soul was leaking away. If he died here, his soul would be absorbed by the soul stone mine underground, adding to the expansion of the mine. Ning Shu hugged the fish tank. The fish tank was covered with frost at first, but it soon disappeared. Could this thing really assimilate anything? Even this kind of power? Ning Shu looked at the fish tank with envy. He really wanted to jump in. However, after comparing his power, he could not do anything to this evil wind. This evil wind might be able to kill him, but this thing could even assimilate this evil wind. If he jumped in, he would definitely die. There was no chance of luck. Sigh. Ning Shu set up a barrier around the fish tank and placed it around the mine. Perhaps one day, it would be able to assimilate these strange winds. Ning Shu placed the fish tank here peacefully. She had set up a barrier. Without her permission, the barrier could not be opened. If someone touched the barrier, she would feel it. Moreover, very few people were able to enter this place, so Ning Shu was very relieved. Finally, he flew out of here. When he reached the city, Ning Shu took out bottles of spirit liquid and set up a stall. He planned to exchange the spirit liquid for soul stones. Ning Shu opened a bottle as a sample to see how pure the spirit liquid was. Gradually, people came to the stall to inquire. Ning Shu explained that he was a soul and wanted to exchange the spirit liquid for soul stones to cultivate. Some people checked the purity of the spirit liquid and felt that it was very pure. They asked Ning Shu how to exchange it. Ning Shu rubbed his hands and said with a smile, "How do you think I should exchange it?" Ning Shu did not know much about the level of consumption here and did not know how to exchange it. Moreover, the purity of her spirit liquid and soul stones was very high. It should be considered a top-grade soul stone. If she let the other party bid, the other party would definitely have some concerns. It would not be too much of a scam. Of course, there were also people who wanted to take advantage of the situation. Ning Shu pretended to be unfathomable. There were many cultivators around the stall. A cultivator hesitated and said, "I will exchange 10 soul stones for your bottle of spirit liquid." Ning Shu was satisfied. She did not need the spirit liquid, but she needed the soul stones. Ning Shu said, "I have to see the purity of your soul stones." Soul stones were the same as soul stones. They had a purity requirement. The cultivator thought for a moment and took out 10 soul stones from his mustard seed pocket. Ning Shu checked the soul stones and frowned. "Do you have any soul stones with a higher purity?" The cultivator shook his head. Well, her first business was off to a good start. At least she could get soul stones in this way. Ning Shu was still very happy. Ning Shu gave the other party a small bottle of spirit liquid and then put away the 10 soul stones. Seeing that the first one was successful, people continued to exchange. However, Ning Shu wanted 20 soul stones of poor quality. If the quality was better, Ning Shu could ask for less. This spirit liquid was just a drop in the ocean in her system space. She might be able to exchange it for a lot of soul stones. After exchanging the spirit liquid, Ning Shu also obtained a lot of soul stones. Some were of good quality, and some were of average purity. Ning Shu packed up her stall. The next time she set up her stall at a different location, there were already quite a number of people looking in her direction. No matter where it was, there would always be a case of a black cat eating another black cat. This was especially true for cultivators, who seized the world to nourish themselves. As long as there were resources, they would snatch them. Ning Shu turned and left. Some people were still following her. Ning Shu quickly walked out of their sight and disappeared into the black hole. /BK Chapter 2107. Seeing that the person they were following suddenly disappeared, the people chasing after him all had ugly expressions. Firstly, because they lost their target, and secondly, because the other party might be very powerful. Ning Shu returned to the system space and got more spirit liquid from the spirit liquid pool to trade. This method was much safer than mining, so he would trade as much as he could. Ning Shu once again appeared in the 9 Palace Mountain, but this time, he set up a stall at a different place. This time, Ning Shu had the same situation as her first transaction. She raised the price slightly and did not bargain. The pure spirit liquid was very popular, but of course, there were some people who wanted to eat it for free. Ning Shu flicked his finger and used the power of law to restrict these troublemakers, making it impossible for them to come out. This kind of method deterred some people with bad intentions. There was no such thing as peace and harmony here, only absolute power could deter some people with bad intentions. In order to avoid trouble, Ning Shu would change places after having sex. She didn't trade at a fixed place. After trading for a period of time, Ning Shu had actually gathered a lot of soul stones. This was much faster than mining or veins, and it was also much safer. Furthermore, Ning Shu was only trading with idle cultivators, he wasn't from a big clan yet. If he traded with a big clan with spirit stone mines, he would definitely get more spirit stones. Looking at the spirit stones that filled half of the system space, Ning Shu finally had the confidence to send a message to the main system asking for cooperation. Then, Ning Shu found that he didn't have a way to contact the main system. This time, he tried to contact it, but the main system erased it. How was he supposed to contact it now? Ning Shu asked 2333, "Can you contact the main system?" "This trade must be done," 2333 grunted and didn't say anything for a while. Ning Shu frowned and asked, "What do you mean by HM? You know that the system is also a soul, right?" 2333 said. "Ning Shu, I know. You said that you used to be a great devil who was imprisoned for billions of years. What a retarded devil." Ning Shu didn't know why 2333 would bring this up. His mind raced and he finally said, "Don't tell me you want a piece of the pie." If she successfully cooperated with the main system this time, she would have extra soul power. 2333 immediately said, "You've become smarter. Ning Shu, get lost. If you can help me get a high percentage, I might even give you a part of it." Ning Shu said. If 2333 didn't put in any effort and still wanted to pick it up for free, how could there be such a good thing in the world? When there's meat, everyone can eat together, but 2333 still has to do something. "I'll try my best. But don't be naive about the main system. It will try its best to lower the price." 2333 said. "Alright, help me contact the main system," Ning Shu said. 2333 made the report. Ning Shu was checking his spirit liquid pool. He didn't care about it before, but now that he could exchange it for spirit stones, Ning Shu was especially concerned about it. He had discovered this when he was in the Mirage Stone and the World Stone. Now the World Stone and the Black Hole had fused into a space that he didn't know if it was the reincarnation world or not. Inside the pool, there seemed to be koi fish swimming, lotus flowers were blooming beautifully, fluttering in the wind, it was very charming. Ning Shu was worried that the spirit liquid in the pool would be used up. Looking at the system exchange store to see if there were any spirit stones, spirit liquid and the like, if there were, he could exchange it and then go to the 9 Palace Mountain to exchange for spirit stones. Doing quests, plus the soul power or spirit source in the spirit stones, her soul should be able to strengthen very quickly. Dong dong. The chat system rang. Ning Shu opened the chat system and saw that the main system had sent a message to him, asking him how to cooperate. "Of course, you are responsible for purifying the soul power, and then everyone will share the purified soul power." Then the main system sent a message, "Because of the processing of spirit stones, the process of purifying the soul power is more complicated, it consumes time and energy. If you want to divide it, 20, 80. Ning Shu, I get 80, you get 20. This distribution was very generous. Main system. You get 20. You get 20, Ning Shu really wanted to scold and tell it to get lost, but it seemed that he was unable to process the impurities in the spirit stones, so these spirit stones in the system space were completely useless. She knew that the main system was a scam, but she did not expect it to be such a scam. It did not even give her 30, 70, it actually gave her 20, 80. She had spent so much spirit liquid, although the spirit liquid did not cost any money, but she had been scared half to death inside the Mirage Stone, repeatedly telling herself to believe in science, democracy, prosperity and harmony. Ning Shu, it's too low, the process of finding these things was very difficult, moreover the mineral deposits were very dangerous, it was not easy for me to dig up these things. Since we are cooperating in good faith, everyone should be mutually beneficial, a long-term cooperation is the way of the king. Only 20%, he did not even have the energy to work. Thinking that the other party had taken away so much, Ning Shu felt unhappy. Main system, then how much do you want? Ning Shu, how much do you think you should give me? Main system, how much do you want? Ning Shu, how much do you think you can give me? Main system. 40%. Ning Shu almost vomited on the screen of the chat system. Before the main system was really a scam, even if it was for the pure soul power, it would require 20% of the cost, but he suddenly took 60%. Your mother. Giving him 40% should be the final result, excluding the cost of the pure soul power, she would get 40%, the other party would get 40%, it was almost 50-50ths. Ning Shu's heart was a little balanced, and asked 2333, what do you think? 2333 gave an "n" sound, it seemed to be considering, and chatted with the main system for a while, only then did it say to Ning Shu, we can make a deal, make a contract with the main system, in any case there is some guarantee, I have already made the contract for you. Sure enough, there were immediate benefits, 2333 was so active. After that, the main system sent over a contract, Ning Shu wrote his name on the screen, and the other party stamped a bright red seal, the cooperation was completed. Ning Shu let out a long breath, and asked 2333, do you think the main system will swallow more of my soul power? No, it won't, such a big organization doesn't have a constitution, 2333 said. Then how do we send these things away? Ning Shu looked at the mountain of soul stones and asked 2333, use the system's energy channel to send them over, this will consume my energy, consume a lot of my energy. 2333 repeated. Ning Shu almost rolled his eyes, didn't he just want to get more of his soul power? Ning Shu gave an "n" sound, and watched the soul stones disappear from the system's storage space. After a while, 2333 said, it has been sent over, I have already recorded the number of soul stones. Ning Shu felt that 2333 was like a peacock spreading its tail, he was very enthusiastic. It was rare to see 2333 so diligent. /BK Chapter 2108 Ning Shu, of course, knew why 2333, who was usually too lazy to talk, suddenly became so enthusiastic. It was because she wanted a share of the soul energy. When 2333 was done, she asked, do you want to expand the system space? Ning Shu. Didn't you say it would waste your energy? Forget it. You're quite considerate. 2333 choked a little and said. Ning Shu chuckled. Right now, she was just trying to get more soul energy. Even if 2333 wanted to expand the system space, Ning Shu was not willing to do so. Even if there was no place to put her feet, she would just soak in the spirit pool or curl up on the sofa. Any difficult situation could be overcome. She just didn't want 2333 to take more soul energy from her. She only got 40% of the soul energy. She had to consider how much to give to 2333. It was not realistic to take everything for herself. She had to ask 2333 for help. Ning Shu asked, how much do you want, 2333, how much do you want to give me? Ning Shu, how much do you want? 2333 hesitated for a moment and said, 20%. Fuck off. Ning Shu said expressionlessly. 2333 said, then 10% should be fine. Ning Shu almost vomited blood. Look at 2333's pitiful face. All she needed to do was to deliver the items to the main system. How could he be so pitiful when she only got 30% after working so hard? Who was she supposed to complain to now? Ning Shu's face darkened. 2333 changed her tone, I think 10% is already very good. Ning Shu said, don't you think it's too little? I think it's too little. Will you give me more? 2333 said. Ning Shu, of course, not 2333, therefore, 2333 received 10% of the purified soul energy, and 2333 accepted the distribution method. With motivation, Ning Shu got some spirit liquid and went to 9 Palace Mountain to exchange for some soul stones. The location of the exchange was uncertain. The world was very big. It could be in this city, or it could appear in another town. Ning Shu also went to the Soul Stone mine to take a look at the law of nothingness. Perhaps one day, the law of nothingness would be filled with things. Everything had a limit. Right now, the law of nothingness could assimilate and devour everything because it had yet to reach its limit. Ning Shu hugged his arms. It was so cold. He could still feel the cold even after turning into a spirit. Ning Shu decided to leave the fish tank here to see how much he could assimilate. Perhaps he could get rid of the evil winds. Then, he might even be able to mine the soul stones. For a soul stone mine that couldn't be mined, it should be a large one. Now that he was using the spirit liquid to exchange for soul stones, he wasn't sure if he would be able to mine them. For the sake of a bit of pure soul energy, Ning Shu had really broken his legs. He didn't know how the main system purified souls. The soul energy contributed by the envoys wasn't pure. It had to be purified first to remove all the impurities and negative things in the soul energy before it was given to the envoys. Ning Shu felt that he had to go to the higher world. He heard that the higher the world, the higher the level. Even if it was to collect soul stones, he had to go to the higher world. The people in the higher world were definitely stronger than the people in this world. After all, he had to go through a mountain of blades and a sea of flames to go up. The wind blades could even cut through his soul. Ning Shu originally wanted to go to the Wind Canyon to look for the spirit replenishing fruit. Eating the spirit replenishing fruit could strengthen his soul. However, there were so many tentacles on the tree. What if he got entangled? This wasn't a simple tentacle play. If he got entangled, he would be done for. She felt that Nine Palace Mountain was very dangerous. Should she go through the mountain of blades and sea of flames to enter the second level? It was better to take it slow. She hadn't figured out the world on this level. She would go after she figured it out. Moreover, there were still a few unmined soul stone mines that she was worried about. Ning Shu got a bunch of soul stones and returned to the system space. 2333 sent the soul stones away. Ning Shu collapsed on the sofa and rested for a while. Ning Shu asked 2333, "How much soul energy do you think there is?" 2333 said, "I don't know. There are many impurities in the soul stones. Even after removing and purifying, I don't know how much is left. Just treat it as a side job. Your main job is to do missions. After all, missions have endless possibilities." Of course, Ning Shu had to do missions. What if he was lucky enough to find some treasure in the mission world? What if he found the world's origin? If he didn't need it, he could sell it. If he found light and dark, that would be even better. Ning Shu didn't know if Xiaohua's two things could be hatched. He had to prepare for both. Whether it was hatched or found in the mission world, it was always a good thing. He was running towards his goal. The goal he had set was slowly being realized. All the sufferings were for that moment, to be glorious and brilliant. Ning Shu scooped out some agarwood from the agarwood box and lit it in the incense burner. Then he lay on the sofa and rested for a while. When he woke up, he would do the mission. Ning Shu had just fallen asleep when the chat system rang. It suddenly appeared in the quiet system space, waking Ning Shu up. Ning Shu opened the chat system. It was a message from Mei Ziqing, who was wailing like a ghost. "What's going on?" Mei Ziqing asked Ning Shu. "Why is the price of items skyrocketing? It's already 4 times the price. I just came back from a mission." Ning Shu said. "Even ghosts don't know what happened. Who cares what happened? Anyway, there's a tall guy supporting it. What's there to be afraid of?" "Of course I know there's a tall guy supporting it. The problem is that the price of items is skyrocketing. I'm poor. Don't you have any news?" Mei Ziqing asked. Ning Shu wanted to know too. However, there was no news. Even the auctioneer didn't know. The auctioneer must have more connections than her. The news must have been sealed. If you don't have money, eat less and buy less. Ning Shu felt that the merit and power of faith in his hands had depreciated. His purchasing power had greatly decreased. This was a bit of a scam. Inflation was hurting people. It was really making people anxious. Ning Shu calmed himself down. Although there were fluctuations, he should be able to calm down later. He would do what he had to do. Even if he knew what had happened, he couldn't change it. He would let the tall guy support it. When he became the tall guy, he might be able to support the falling sky. Ning Shu asked about the incubation of the world's origin. Mei Ziqing said directly, those are just two ordinary stones. They're useless. Xiaohua dripped blood on them. There's no reaction. Dripped blood on them? Ning Shu was surprised. Mei Ziqing said, isn't it because you've been urging him every day? Xiaohua felt that it was his responsibility and dripped blood on them. After all, he's the world's origin. His blood contains the power of the world's origin. Just like humans, it's not good for his body if he loses too much blood. Ning Shu said. I was wrong. I won't urge him anymore. Chapter 2109. Ning Shu didn't expect Xiaohua to be so honest as to use his own blood. He had some doubts about the two lumps in his heart. He doubted whether they were real or not, but he still asked about them from time to time. Ning Shu, if they aren't, I'll let Xiaohua play with them in the future. Mei Ziqing, what's so fun about them? Ning Shu, you have a point. Ning Shu, don't let him use his blood. Incubate them slowly. If they hatch, then do it. If they don't hatch, then forget it. After all, they were inanimate objects. How could they compare to life? Furthermore, Xiaohua was the source of the world. It wasn't easy. He needed luck and coincidence. He also needed to be favored by the heavens. Otherwise, he would be the only one who had gained sentience. Mei Ziqing, after the first time, I didn't let him do this kind of thing. What if he loses too much blood and becomes anemic? Ning Shu. Anemic is unlikely. Although Xiaohua had a child's IQ, his ability was there. He was the source of the world. Mei Ziqing, how do you know it's impossible? You don't feel bad for someone who isn't you. Ning Shu. I was wrong. He might become anemic. I won't mess with you. After chatting with Mei Ziqing for a while, Ning Shu closed the chat system and opened the exchange store. Looking at the price, Ning Shu felt like he was going to heaven. He didn't know what the other mission enforcers were thinking, but Ning Shu wouldn't let himself have too much expenditure now. She would be stupid to buy something that could only be bought at 4 times the previous price. Ning Shu saw that the exchange store had all kinds of talisman paper. She also knew how to draw talisman paper. Could she also draw talisman paper and sell them? Especially now that the price was so high, could she make a profit? However, the price of a talisman paper wasn't high and could be bought with points. Ning Shu felt that points were useless to him. Moreover, the things that could be bought with points in the exchange store weren't anything good. So what was the use of points? The items in the exchange store were definitely made by people. Were there craftsmen in the organization? Other than the mission enforcers and the system, there were also all kinds of talented people and the army. This organization was bigger and deeper than she had imagined. It was a big tree with many branches and leaves, each operating independently. I wonder how long this organization has existed. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that the mission enforcer was just one of the branches. This was just the tip of the iceberg. He knelt before the huge organization. What was the purpose of the organization? Ning Shu was too lazy to think about it. It was useless to think about it. When he was strong enough, he would definitely be able to come into contact with the organization's internal affairs. Ning Shu felt that he was still a non-staff member of the organization. He reckoned that he wasn't even a regular worker. Was she a temporary worker? The feeling of being a temporary worker was really hard to get rid of. If I do something wrong in the future, can I use the excuse that I'm a temporary worker? Alright, he didn't even have the chance to explain before he was killed. There was no such thing as a mistake here. All he had to do was admit his mistake. That would cost his life. He had to be extremely careful, as if he was treading on thin ice. Ning Shu yawned. He was woken up by Mei Ziqing, so he went back to sleep for a while. After waking up, he felt refreshed. Although he was in spirit form, Ning Shu felt much better. At least he didn't feel so tired anymore. Ning Shu opened the systems exchange shop and bought some fasting pills. He spent 4 times the price to buy these pills. He didn't feel that it was a small thing, but if he had bought something expensive, it would have scared him out of his wits. However, the price still didn't show any signs of dropping. He completely ignored the mission enforcers. Ning Shu said to 2333, "Go do the mission." 2333 asked as usual, "Do the systems mission?" "Ning Shu, don't you think it's embarrassing for you to say that? If it was rejected, it would seem inhumane. Just do it." The systems mission wasn't easy anyway. It was especially tiring to fight someone who had activated the everlasting hack. Therefore, it usually took a while. Although it was a mutually beneficial thing, it was still tiring. Sometimes, it could be seen from some details that 2333 didn't care much about her. They were all strangers before. At most, they would become familiar with each other. There were more benefits involved. Everyone had their own standpoints and thoughts. Ning Shu wouldn't cry and beg 2333 to care for her. She wouldn't accuse 2333 of being cold and heartless. She was the same with 2333. She didn't have the right to accuse 2333. They were all colleagues. It was just that they didn't work as well as others. 2333 directly threw Ning Shu out. Fortunately, Ning Shu's spirit was stronger. When he merged with her body, she didn't vomit. Ning Shu rolled her eyes and flew into a rage out of humiliation. Ning Shu looked at the situation around her. She was sleeping on a bed, and she could even smell the fragrance of spices. Her body was very uncomfortable, her whole body was burning, and her head was hurting. Moreover, there was a man sleeping next to her. Ning Shu was speechless. What kind of scene did she transmigrate into? The man next to her was unconscious. His hair was as black as ink and his chest was exposed. The 2 pink fruits on his chest looked very seductive. There was a blush on his face. He looked very handsome. Ning Shu's body was screaming, but her heart was suppressed. Even if he was a heavenly handsome man, it was obviously a trap set by a celestial. Ning Shu would be stupid to jump into it. Ning Shu had to be stupid to jump into it. Ning Shu. Ning Shu bit her finger. The pain came. Ning Shu took a deep breath. Her head was about to explode. It hurt like hell. In this situation, someone should be coming to catch them in the act. Ning Shu directly wrapped the man next to her with the blanket. She was ready to carry the man and escape through the window. What made Ning Shu feel worse was that she didn't have any strength. She was trembling when she walked. This situation didn't allow her to accept the plot calmly. She reckoned that she had been poisoned by the pugilistic world's special drug, the kind that would kill her if she didn't do it. Ning Shu quickly used her peerless martial arts. It was very rough, causing her meridians to hurt as if they were being pricked by needles. She got off the bed and picked up the teapot on the table. She sniffed to see if there were any other ingredients. Then, she gulped down a mouthful of tea. When she opened the door, she realized that it was locked from the outside. Damn, only you know how to lock. Ning Shu directly bolted the door. It would take some time for you to come in. Then, Ning Shu carried the man who was wrapped in a blanket and looked like he was about to be carried to bed. However, with a crack, she twisted her waist. This body was a little weak. Ning Shu opened the window and threw the man out with a plop. If it was Ning Shu, he would directly seal the window so that she couldn't escape. He probably thought that she had taken the drug and didn't have the strength to escape. So, he didn't bother to seal the window. Chapter 21:10. Ning Shu used his spiritual power to scan the room inch by inch to see if there were any items that could prove his identity, such as jade pendants or jewelry. If these things were left behind, even if she ran away, some of the items would be in vain. Ning Shu quickly walked to the bed, lifted the quilt, and saw an earring. It was a white jade earring. Ning Shu touched his ear. Sure enough, his left ear was missing an earring. He grabbed the earring on the bed sheet. Ning Shu looked at the messy bed sheet and tidied it up. The front yard was bustling with noise. There must be something going on. There was a banquet. She was doing something with a man in the back. A group of people were trying to catch her in the act. Ning Shu didn't know how many times he had seen this kind of domestic drama that humiliated people's innocence. Especially in ancient times, if she encountered an era that was extremely harsh on reputation, she probably wouldn't be able to survive. Ning Shu hung the earring in his ear hole. He held it in his hand and accidentally dropped it again. Ning Shu climbed out of the window. Behind the room was a bamboo forest. The bamboo wind rustled, and there was a quiet and elegant feeling. Before, the furnishings in the room were quite good. Could it be this man's room? Ran into someone's room and wanted to do something bad. Ning Shu sweated in his heart. He didn't know who designed this. Could it be that the client lost his mind and rushed into a man's room, especially when there were so many people in the front yard? Ning Shu dragged the man away. When he reached the place of the rockery, he was already tired and sweating. There were still remnants of the drug in his body. Ning Shu wiped the cold sweat on his head. He didn't expect to be in such a passive situation. As for the unconscious man, Ning Shu intended to leave him here. It was very kind of him not to leave him at the scene of the adultery. He guessed that he was also one of the people who had been plotted against. They were in the same boat. Ning Shu's meridians hurt like needles. It seemed that the meridians of this body were very blocked. It was a waste of martial arts. Even if his body absorbed the spiritual energy, his meridians were like blocked sewers, unable to circulate the spiritual energy. Sigh, the most important thing now was to get through this. Ning Shu tidied up his clothes and hair, quietly waiting for things to develop and accepting the plot. He also had to slowly open up the meridians in his body and open up the blocked meridians. She could only use her spiritual energy to drill into her meridians, but it was a little painful, causing her skin to bleed. Ning Shu began to accept the plot. He thought that this was an ancient world where men were superior to women, but he didn't expect it to be a world where women were superior. Furthermore, the client's status was not low. She was actually a member of the royal family, and she was the crown princess. This identity was beyond Ning Shu's expectations. Someone was plotting against the crown princess. If nothing unexpected happened, the crown princess would become the empress in the future. The empress. The client's name was Ni Bingyan. She was the crown princess of the Li state. Her mother was the empress, and her father was the empress. Ni Bingyan was not a very competent crown princess in the Li state, where everyone worshipped martial arts. Because she was weak, people often called her a useless crown princess behind her back. The courtiers also said that the crown princess really couldn't become a crown princess. She was so weak that she didn't have the might of a crown princess at all. Fortunately, her mother, the Empress, was not so soft that her child was really disabled. However, Ni Bingyan received a lot of strange looks. Sometimes, Ni Bingyan wanted to be an ordinary prince. She was so timid. After all, her physical condition was there, and it couldn't be changed by hard work. The whole nation worshipped martial arts. Even children could do a few somersaults. Ni Bingyan was really embarrassed, especially when her sister was very outstanding. This was even more embarrassing. The cowardly crown prince thought about how to get from the position of crown prince without hurting his own life. He was the empress's daughter, so he wouldn't be demoted to a commoner. As for today's scene, it must have been planned by her sister. It was the prime minister's birthday, and then the crown princess humiliated the prime minister's son. In fact, neither of them had sex. After being splashed awake, they opened their eyes and saw the empress in a luxurious dress and the prime minister with a dark face. Now that things had developed to this point, they could only go on like this. The empress bestowed a marriage between her daughter and the prime minister's son. Ni Bingyan was in fear and trepidation. She thought that she would be removed from the position of crown princess, but she still kept it. Ni Bingyan was in a complicated mood. The position of crown princess really made her feel like she was sitting on pins and needles. Sitting on the top, her sisters were all jealous and wanted to do her. If she came down, she might even lose her life. It was hard to get off the tiger. The cowardly crown prince of Li State and Fenjiuxuan, the son of the peerless prime minister, got married. Countless women in Li State beat their chests and stamped their feet. How could such a man be married to the crown prince who had no achievements and occupied the position of crown princess? Ni Bingyan felt that she had to thank her sisters for being able to marry Fenjiuxuan. A man like Fenjiuxuan was rare in the world. He was good at literature, martial arts, playing the piano, fighting in wars, writing poems, and killing people. He was so perfect. The most important thing was that he was neither servile nor overbearing, and he didn't have the seductive attitude of ordinary men. However, after the marriage, Ni Bingyan was dumbfounded. Fenjiuxuan didn't sleep with her at all, and he didn't let her touch him either. They slept in separate rooms. Well, Fenjiuxuan was arrogant and looked down on her. Ni Bingyan didn't force him. After all, she was worried every day about how long she would be able to hold the position of crown princess. Ni Bingyan didn't know what the empress mother meant. Was she a whetstone for her sisters, or was she a whetstone for her sisters, or did they mean to grind each other? It depended on who would grind it out in the end. She couldn't practice martial arts, but the position of crown princess was her advantage. Ni Bingyan and Fenjiuxuan treated each other with respect after marriage, like strangers. Fenjiuxuan looked down on Ni Bingyan. Moreover, Fenjiuxuan should be the first man to awaken to male chauvinism. He was tired of and hated the country ruled by women. No matter where he went, his appearance would attract the covetous eyes of women, which made him very irritated. He married a woman because of an accident. Oh, he didn't want to get married at all. Fenjiuxuan was the man who would eventually become the empress. This opportunity came from a woman who had transmigrated from the modern era. This woman had transmigrated to the crown princess and saw such a handsome man being dominated by a woman like the crown princess. Under the influence of certain forces, the crown princess's reputation was tarnished. She was an idiot, lecherous, vicious, and it was said that she even drank human blood. The transmigrated woman wanted to save Fenjiuxuan, especially when such a peerless man was in deep trouble. Fenjiuxuan was a male chauvinist. Although the transmigrated woman was a modern woman, she seemed to have lived in a world where men were superior to women. Even if society didn't oppress women so much and paid attention to equality between men and women, she was still a bit servile. She often came to the crown princess residence to see Fenjiuxuan. Chapter 21:11. Whenever this woman saw Fenjiuxuan, she would act cute and infatuated. She was quite adorable. She was always acting like she couldn't sleep with a handsome young man. Her life was no different from a salted fish. Because the ruler was a woman, the women in the state were more domineering. Moreover, it was women marrying men in marriage. Fenjiuxuan was a bit of a male chauvinist. When he met such a soft and cute woman, she looked up to him. She wasn't as domineering as other women who always looked at him with teary eyes. This feeling was like the regret in his heart was filled. A great love was born between the two of them. After that, Fenjiuxuan used his intelligence to make this transmigrated woman stand out in front of the empress. He also made the person who asked for the transmigrated woman lose her position as the crown princess. When the transmigrated woman ascended the throne, she gave her throne to Fenjiuxuan and made Fenjiuxuan the emperor. Then, she moved into the harem and became the only empress. The atmosphere of a society was related to the ruler. It was either the east wind suppressing the west wind or the west wind suppressing the east wind. When a man was in power, the status of a man changed drastically. Because the empress moved into the harem, the status of a woman also developed from outside to inside. Li state began to develop into a male-dominated country. In the process of fighting for the throne, the members of the royal Ni family were almost all killed. But to the transmigrated woman, these people weren't her relatives. Moreover, there was no family affection in the royal family. A general success was built on thousands of dead bodies. It was a very normal thing. Fenjiuxuan was also afraid that the Ni family would retaliate. However, the person who asked for the transmigrated woman had a terrible reputation. She was beheaded and hung on the city wall, exposed to the wind and sun, and pecked by all kinds of birds. To be together for a lifetime was a very tempting promise for a woman. To be together for a lifetime was the greatest goal of a woman's life. The man would become the highest ruler and the wife would be honored. To be loved and protected was the greatest happiness in a woman's life. Because of this, the transmigrated woman had a perfect love. Ning Shu was speechless. Was this going to turn every world into a world where men were superior to women? Then, the status of men and women in this world changed too quickly, just like a tornado. Why did he have to transmigrate? The status of men in this world was not that low. After all, men could still practice martial arts and fight wars. In a world where men were superior to women, those women did not step out of the house. They tied their feet and locked themselves at home. In the heart of the transmigrated woman, it was normal for a man to be the emperor. Once she ascended the throne, she would immediately give the throne to her adulterer. Then, she would squat in the harem, waiting for the man's favor and love. The client's wish was to sit on the throne. Even if he couldn't sit on the throne, he couldn't let Fenjiuxuan sit on the throne. He couldn't let the foundation of his ancestors be destroyed. Ning Shu looked at the unconscious Fenjiuxuan and chuckled. He picked up a stone from the ground, intending to destroy Fenjiuxuan's peerless face. Would the transmigrated woman still be infatuated with Fenjiuxuan's face? Love began with one's appearance. Without Fenjiuxuan's face, would that woman, who seemed to be very open and wanted to sleep with a handsome man, lower her gaze? Just as Ning Shu was about to destroy his face, Fenjiuxuan woke up. He opened his beautiful obsidian-like eyes and looked around in confusion. When he turned to Ning Shu's face, his eyes flashed with sharpness. "Crown Princess, what are you doing?" Fenjiuxuan sat up. His clothes were torn open, revealing a large portion of his chest. Fenjiuxuan glared fiercely at Ning Shu. Then, he closed his clothes to prevent himself from being exposed. Ning Shu's mouth twitched. He had seen it a long time ago. If not, he was the male lead. He woke up just as she was about to do something naughty. Ning Shu was a little regretful. He had been fooling around for a while. It was completely meaningless. Moreover, he had even helped Fenjiuxuan. If she had accepted the plot earlier, she would have just laid in the room with Fenjiuxuan and quietly waited for someone to catch them in the act. If she married Fenjiuxuan, then so be it. It was better than letting him be together with the transmigrated woman. Even if Fenjiuxuan and the transmigrated woman were together, the history books would record it. He and his sister-in-law had to tell the story. Then, his sister-in-law would give up the throne for him and let him ascend to the throne. The transmigrated woman was not a person of this world. She did not belong to this world and did not understand the situation of this world. In her heart, there was only a handsome little brother. In her heart, she probably felt that her mission in coming to this world was to help the deeply troubled Fenjiuxuan reach the pinnacle of life and ascend to the throne. At the same time, she would also obtain a beautiful love story and become the woman behind a successful man. Young Master Feng is so smart. He should be able to understand the current situation with one look. Ning Shu said indifferently. All kinds of thoughts flashed through Fenjiuxuan's mind. He glanced at Ning Shu. Someone probably wanted to make a move on the Prime Minister's residence. They wanted to use the Prime Minister's residence's power and influence to attack this idiot crown princess. He was the one who was implicated. Fenjiuxuan's face immediately darkened. His expression was a little humiliated. Ning Shu chuckled in his heart. You're so great, but you were still schemed against. Ning Shu saw a lotus pond not far from the fake mountain. He glanced at Fenjiuxuan. At this time, the transmigrated woman should not have arrived. No matter what, she had to follow the plot. She had to make Fenjiuxuan marry her. Ning Shu originally wanted to make a move on Fenjiuxuan directly. However, she remembered that Fenjiuxuan's martial arts were superior. Her body was weak. She had no chance of winning against Fenjiuxuan. The most important thing for us now is to go back. After all, we've been out for so long. Ning Shu said to Fenjiuxuan. Fenjiuxuan did not look at Ning Shu kindly. He snorted. He probably felt that he had been taken advantage of by the idiot crown princess. He was unhappy. He straightened his clothes and left. Ning Shu saw that Fenjiuxuan had left. He also left the fake mountain. When he passed by the lotus pond, he reached out his hand and pushed Fenjiuxuan into the water. Fenjiuxuan, who was absent-minded, was pushed into the lotus pond. Before he could react, he fell into the lotus pond. Ning Shu immediately used his hand like a loudspeaker and shouted, "Help!" Someone fell into the water. Then, he jumped in to save Fenjiuxuan. He did not expect that Fenjiuxuan, who had superior martial arts, was actually a non-swimmer. He struggled in the water. Ning Shu swam over and dragged him to the shore. Hearing Ning Shu's shout, a group of people had already come over. The leader was the Empress. Behind her was Fenjiuxuan's mother, Prime Minister Feng. What happened? The Empress asked sternly. Ning Shu immediately said, Mother Empress, I saw young Master Feng fall into the lotus pond. The Empress glanced at Ning Shu and said, Prime Minister Feng, quickly call a doctor over to take a look at your son. Prime Minister Feng was anxious. He quickly asked the servants to call a doctor over. He was anxious. How did his son get involved with the idiot crown princess? Chapter 21:12. Ning Shu suddenly had a feeling that the heavenly Tao was in the cycle of reincarnation. She wanted to see who the heavens would spare. Men used this method to extort women, and Ning Shu was now using the same method to extort men. One day, men would be incomparably sullen because of their reputation. However, if Fenjiuxuan insisted on not marrying her, it was not impossible. After all, he was the Prime Minister's son. However, such days would not last long. After the transmigrated woman ascended the throne to Fenjiuxuan, she would spend her time in the harem. When she felt bored, she would do something. For example, she would call for women to return to the family, be a good wife and mother, support men to work hard and so on. If it was not for the fact that she did not remember the 3 obedience and 4 virtues for women, she would probably write a book to regulate women's behavior. Following the example of their superiors, some women would go to the harem and enter the cage of thoughts. If they wanted to break free from the cage of thoughts, it would probably be a matter of 1,000 years later. The castration of thoughts was more terrifying than the torture of the body. The severe confinement of etiquette could be passed down forever. People of the same sex were the best at making things difficult for people of the same sex. In such a world, everyone was equal, but in reality, they were just waving the flag and shouting for men's rights. Ning Shu felt that the transmigrated woman might have some misunderstandings about openness. Openness meant being open-minded and accepting different things and viewpoints. It was not as if being brave enough to have a one-night stand with a young man was openness. Women had the right to enjoy, but responsibilities and obligations were equal. Ning Shu seriously suspected that this transmigrated woman had transmigrated from the Qing dynasty of a certain world. The Qing dynasty had already fallen. Men had cancer of the straight man, and women also had cancer of the straight man. Perhaps one day, she would have to rewind the car of history. She would have to wrap a 3-inch golden lotus, bend her toes, sway while walking, and clamp her buttocks to cater to men's deformed aesthetic standards. How terrifying! Was the transmigrated woman actually a woman or a man? Otherwise, how could she have so many misunderstandings about being a woman? Fenjiuxuan's mother saw her proud son lying on the ground like a drowned rat. She hurriedly called for a doctor. Ning Shu clenched her fists and smashed them on Feng Yushuan's chest. She smashed his chest with a hammer. Everyone around them was speechless. Ning Shu smashed a few times and directly smashed Fenjiuxuan until he spat out water and woke up. "Yushuan, how are you?" Prime Minister Feng immediately helped his son up. Ning Shu retreated to the empress' side. Looking at the mighty and domineering empress, he liked strong women. Only strong women could have a strong destiny. It was said that men did not like strong women. That was because men were weak. The purpose of a woman's existence was not to make men like her or feel sorry for her. She did not need anyone's pity. It was my choice to be gentle with little e. It was also my choice to leave. I had the right to choose my own life. When Fenjiuxuan woke up, he felt his heart going numb. When he saw Ning Shu, his eyes were sharp and filled with disgust. He clearly knew that he was pushed down by someone, and the main culprit was this idiot crown princess. So many people saw him entangling with the crown princess. Fenjiuxuan held his anger in his heart, but he also knew that there was no evidence to prove that he was pushed down by someone. He would also be accused of framing the royal family. Moreover, the empress was here. At that time, she saw the crown princess jump down to save him. Did she have fun? She wanted to ruin his reputation. Fenjiuxuan suspected that the previous matter was set up by this woman. Fenjiuxuan covered his chest. His jade-like face had water droplets on it. His clothes were also wet, faintly revealing his figure. Fenjiuxuan practiced martial arts. His figure was quite good. Some manservants and servant girls looked at Fenjiuxuan's body. Fenjiuxuan's manservant quickly took a cloak and put it on him. He helped Fenjiuxuan stand up. Fenjiuxuan bowed to the empress and said, "Your Majesty, please do not blame me for my lack of etiquette. Go boil a bowl of ginger soup." "Although the weather is not cold, the pond water is cold," the empress said majestically. Her aura was oppressive. Fenjiuxuan quickly bowed and thanked her. From beginning to end, he did not look at Ning Shu. However, Ning Shu's eyes followed Fenjiuxuan's back until he disappeared around the corner. Should she leave this person to the transmigrated woman? Ning Shu suppressed the killing intent in her heart. There were many handsome men among the nobility. Without Fenjiuxuan, there was still the water jade pavilion. There were plenty of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth jade pavilions. The men of the nobility were all very handsome. They cared about their bodies and faces just like women. After all, they had to choose a good family. Ning Shu glanced at the few women beside her. They were all her sisters. Each of them had their own characteristics. They were all beauties. Who was the one who planned today's matter? Ning Shu glanced at the youngest empress, Ni Bai Wei. She was about 14 years old. She was really in the bud. It was just that the transmigrated woman had transmigrated into her body. Ni Bai Wei sensed Ning Shu's gaze and immediately smiled at Ning Shu. Ning Shu withdrew her gaze. Therefore, she temporarily left Fenjiuxuan alone. Moreover, Fenjiuxuan was the Prime Minister's son. Moreover, he was someone the Empress trusted. Fenjiuxuan could be said to be the most handsome man in the Li state. His genes might have come from Prime Minister Feng. Prime Minister Feng was a charming woman. She looked very charming, but she was very imposing when she kept a straight face. For example, right now, Prime Minister Feng was looking at her with displeasure. It was probably because the Empress was by his side that Prime Minister Feng was suppressing it. Even if the Empress treated her well, he was still a subject and could not overstep his boundaries. Prime Minister Feng then said to Ning Shu, "Your Highness, please change your wet clothes so that you won't catch a cold." Ning Shu was a little uneasy. He nodded and followed the maid to the room to change his wet clothes. Then he returned to the banquet. The Empress sitting opposite him laughed and said to Ning Shu, "Big sister, you are so embarrassed." Ning Shu glanced at the Empress, who was holding a wine cup and talking to Prime Minister Feng. She did not seem to notice the quarrel here. Then he said, "Fourth sister, you jumped into the water and did not look embarrassed. Didn't your clothes get wet?" The Empress sitting opposite him smiled. "I just did not expect you to have the courage to jump in to save people. Or were you attracted by young Master Feng's peerless charm?" Usually, the person who entrusted the task was very careful. They were afraid that they would make a mistake and lose their identity as the crown princess. They did not want this identity, but they had to use this identity to save their lives. Ning Shu touched the wine cup and said, "Saving a life is better than building a 7-floor pagoda. Big sister is so kind." The Empress stopped the topic and did not say anything more. Because Fenjiuxuan had fallen into the water, Prime Minister Feng's banquet had a strong start but a weak finish. Back in the palace, the Empress asked Ning Shu to stay. Ning Shu faced the Empress respectfully. She was very timid. The Empress looked at Ning Shu. Ning Shu felt a sharp gaze sweep over him. He immediately lowered his head. Chapter 21:13. Bing Yan likes the young master of the Feng family. The Empress's voice slowly rang out in the palace. Ning Shu raised his head in surprise, then lowered it again and didn't say anything. The Empress frowned. "You are the crown princess of the Li state, second only to one person. Why are you being so shy?" Ning Shu rolled his eyes in his mind. How could the Empress make his weak daughter the crown princess? How could his daughter live in the rumors? Maybe this was a test. Who knew? I don't like it," Ning Shu said while picking at his nails. The Empress looked at Ning Shu. "You really don't like it?" "I really don't like it," Ning Shu said. The Empress nodded and waved her hand to let Ning Shu leave. Ning Shu originally wanted to see the father of this body, but after thinking about it, he decided against it. As a mother, the Empress was very busy and only knew that her daughter was a coward. However, as a father who lived in the harem and had nothing to do, he knew the client better. Maybe later. Ning Shu returned to the Crown Princess residence. The house was very grand. Ning Shu sneezed and quickly took a hot bath to avoid catching a cold. Ning Shu had just finished bathing when the maid beside him said that a servant came to deliver ginger soup. He heard that the crown princess had fallen into the water in the prime minister's residence, so he made ginger soup for her. Ning Shu raised his eyebrows. There were servants in the backyard, but not many, only 2. It was probably because the crown princess was too cowardly that not many nobles were willing to bring their sons to the crown princess residence. Ni Bingyan, who wanted to climb up the social ladder, directly rejected them. Although Ni Bingyan was a coward, she wasn't a fool. She was a bit afraid that there were spies in her backyard. Men and women alike were addicted to beauty and couldn't extricate themselves. In front of the threat of her life, Ni Bingyan trembled with fear. Ning Shu felt that his client was in a bit of a predicament. Although she was the crown princess, many people believed that she would not be able to sit on the throne. Even she believed so. She was just waiting for that day to come. Ning Shu said to the servant girl who answered him, "Let him in." "Yes." Following which, a man in light blue clothes came in with a lunchbox in his hand. He bowed respectfully to Ning Shu and poured some ginger soup for him. Ning Shu glanced at the man. He had delicate features, and his knuckles were distinct. He gave off a gentle and beautiful feeling, giving people the feeling that he was a fair-skinned young man. Most of the men here were like this. There were also many who had masculine beauty, but the mainstream aesthetic was like this man. Ning Shu picked up the bowl and sniffed it. There was a pungent smell of ginger, but there were other ingredients too. Someone had actually put something in it. She had just fallen into the water. Was he going to drug her and have sex with her? Ning Shu put down the bowl and said, "I drank it in the palace before." Seeing Ning Shu put down the bowl, Yuqi's eyes flashed with disappointment. She said, "Crown Princess, you should drink some." Yuqi approached Ning Shu. Ning Shu smelled a fragrance with a hint of musk. Ning Shu moved down and scanned with his spiritual power. He actually saw that Yuqi's thing was standing up. Previously, he had noticed that Yuqi's walking posture was a little strange. However, when he scanned it, Ning Shu felt that it was a little blinding. Some men's desires were very strong. No wonder Yuqi ended up with a crown princess. If one wanted to live a good life, one had to be cuckolded. The first husband had been with another crown princess, and the second husband had also been with another crown princess. If the client washed her hair, she would definitely make a pool of water green. Because he had an affair with another woman, he would naturally dig a small hole or a big hole for the client from time to time. Ning Shu felt that the client, as a crown princess, was really aggrieved. She probably wasn't the empress's biological child. Yuqi didn't like the client either. Now that she wanted to drug him, a man's love and sex were separated. Women had sex because of love, and men loved because of sex. Ning Shu didn't want to have sex with Yuqi. What if she got pregnant? It was still such a dangerous time. What if she died during childbirth? What if she had a miscarriage? What if she endured until childbirth? What if both of them died? Moreover, Ning Shu didn't like Yuqi. Ning Shu only said, "Go to the courtyard and stay there. Don't run around if you have nothing to do." Yuqi was even more disappointed. She couldn't force Ning Shu, so she held back her anger and left. Ning Shu curled the corners of his mouth and smiled. He was going to have plenty of food and clothing. If it weren't for the rules, Yuqi would have already gone to the brothel with a tent. Men didn't have self-awareness. Just like the animals in the animal world, in order to pass on their genes, they had to mate with as many female animals as possible. This way, the possibility of passing on their genes would be higher. There was no loyalty in men's survival instincts. Their instincts were to reproduce more. This was the result of natural selection. In the animal world, most of the female animals gave birth to the next generation and then taught the next generation survival and hunting skills. It had nothing to do with male animals. They only needed to provide the seeds. A world without restrictions was terrifying. Even in modern times, they could barely rely on the law and moral restraints. However, there were still so many divorces and affairs. Ning Shu told his personal maid that he was going to rest and not to disturb him if there was nothing. When the maid left, she closed the door for Ning Shu. Ning Shu sat cross-legged on the bed and began to cultivate. However, the meridians in his body were blocked. To open up his meridians, he felt like he wanted to reshape his body. It was like a steel knife scraping against his bones. Ning Shu looked at his skin and blood seeped out of his pores. The client's body, no matter what plane it was placed in, was a proper martial arts trash. It was 100% isolated from martial arts. Ning Shu gritted his teeth and endured. As long as he had the ability, he could wait for his subordinates to save him if he encountered any danger. His blood had already dried up and he was dead stiff. Damn, there were so many meridians in his body. He needed to open them up one by one. Ning Shu opened his eyes and used a handkerchief to wipe off the blood droplets on his body. Although it was painful, it was still tolerable. Although the client was a good-for-nothing, he had recruited a sincere aide. This aide was a woman who had not passed the imperial examinations for a long time. However, she was a very powerful woman. She had contributed greatly to the client being able to stay in the position of the crown princess for so long. Ning Shu threw the bloody handkerchief into the basin and headed towards the aide's courtyard. The client had specially built a courtyard for this aide to live alone. Ning Shu arrived at the entrance of the courtyard and saw a woman wearing a white robe. Her hair was pinned up with a wooden hairpin. She looked very leisurely, like she was picking chrysanthemums under the eastern fence and leisurely looking at the southern mountain. Masterly, Ning Shu cupped his hands. The client respectfully addressed this woman as teacher. Masterly placed the water ladle in the bucket, wiped her hands, and saluted Ning Shu. She directly asked, "Did something happen to the crown princess in the prime minister's residence?" Ning Shu recounted the events in the prime minister's residence to Masterly. In the end, he said that Fenjiuxuan fell into the pond and was saved. Of course, he omitted the part where he pushed Fenjiuxuan in. He said that Fenjiuxuan was drugged and his body was weak. In the end, he did not pay attention and fell into the pond. Chapter 21:14. Masterly looked at Ning Shu with a faint smile. Her Highness the Crown Princess likes the sons of the Feng family. Ning Shu was speechless. She doesn't. Ning Shu shook his head. Then does your Highness want to marry the sons of the Feng family? Masterly asked. That big Buddha can't be brought in. My reputation is not good, and my temple is small. I can't afford it. Ning Shu shrugged. Masterly gently poured a cup of tea for Ning Shu. The fragrance of the tea was faint. Ning Shu smelled it, took a sip, and said, "Sometimes, I really envy Masterly's life." Masterly said leisurely, "In life, we don't pursue food and clothing, and on the basis of food and clothing, we want to build a career. It's not impossible for you to marry young Master Feng, but you have to go through a series of operations. Prime Minister Feng should be very afraid that his son will be related to your Highness." Masterly drank the tea. "He will definitely have the imperial censor impeach you." Ning Shu was bored to death. "If the imperial censor really impeaches me, Mother Empress will definitely marry Fenjiuxuan to me." According to the analysis of the plot, Ning Shu felt that this Her Highness the Empress held a bowl of water very evenly. She paid attention to the art of balance. He believed that Her Highness the Empress was aware of the matter regarding the Prime Minister's residence. She definitely had to make it up to her and let her have enough strength to fight with her sisters. She wouldn't let the power of one side be too biased. The person who entrusted her was a weakling. Her qualifications in all aspects were not too outstanding. She didn't seem to be a qualified emperor. Her reputation among the people was not worth mentioning. But with the identity of the crown princess, it could be considered legitimate. This identity allowed her to barely have the strength to fight. Her Highness the Empress was probably raising goo. The winner was king. Everyone had a chance. A chance to climb up the ranks for the emperor. Master Li smelled the tea. Prime Minister Feng also has to figure out the emperor's intentions. No matter whether this marriage succeeds or not, you have to have the imperial censor make things difficult for you. It is very likely that this marriage will succeed. Ning Shu grunted. He was already prepared to be scolded by the censors during the morning assembly tomorrow. With the support of the Feng clan, Your Highness will be able to relax a little. Li Shi smiled and said, I've long heard that the Feng clan's sons are peerless talents and are also unparalleled in intelligence. The corners of Ning Shu's mouth twitched. It was because marrying Fenjiuxuan would result in a fate many times worse than seizing the throne. The next day, during the morning assembly, Ning Shu greeted Prime Minister Feng. However, Prime Minister Feng was neither cold nor warm. When he saw Ning Shu, he looked very unhappy. You're not happy, but I'm also not happy. Your Feng family killed the entire Ni family, not leaving a single one behind. No, there was a seedling left. That was the fake Ni Baiwei. He didn't know how Ni Baiwei ended up. Maybe Fenjiuxuan promised to only be with one person for life, but in the end, he might have a harem of 3,000 beauties. Who knows? Maybe the Ni Baiwei who transmigrated didn't know how to govern a country, or maybe she was lazy. She probably felt more comfortable in the harem with an emperor husband protecting her. She could eat and drink every day, wear luxurious clothes and have a group of servants. Why did Ning Shu feel that this girl wouldn't have a good ending in the future? The Ni family's royal family was killed, and Ni Baiwei was all alone. Fenjiuxuan was already the emperor, why would he have to worry about her? If they were to talk about love at this time, the emperor was more or less like a capitalist. If you talked about feelings with him, he would talk about money with you. If you talked about money with him, he would talk about ideals with you. It was those women who were called to return to their families that forced the society to become a patriarchal society. This speed was very fast. Prime Minister Feng didn't like her, and Ning Shu also didn't want to find trouble with her. She stood according to her position and prepared to welcome the empress. During this time, there were some other empresses who talked to Ning Shu. In the imperial court, there was a lot of sisterly love. Even if they wanted to pretend, they had to pretend to be happy and harmonious. Ning Shu roughly understood the power between the empresses. The power was divided into 3 factions. Ning Shu couldn't help but raise his eyebrows when he saw the faction that the empresses were in. Damn, she could compete with the 9 dragons for the position of Prime Minister. Her Majesty the Empress was really good at giving birth. Ning Shu sighed. It was better for her to be honest. Her previous fear wasn't without reason. Also, she shouldn't do anything that offended her superiors and touched the sensitive thoughts of the emperor. Who would be happy to have someone thinking about the chair under her but all day long, especially when she was still alive? She would wait until she opened up the meridians in her body. Now that she was weak and had the strength to protect herself, she could slowly plan. The person who entrusted her gave her 2 choices. She could ascend the throne, but it was also fine if the Ni family had other people ascend the throne, as long as Ni Baiwei didn't ascend the throne and abdicate. Ning Shu felt that she had to fight for the throne because she was the crown princess. If she couldn't ascend the throne in the future and the other empresses ascended the throne, would there be a legitimate person who could threaten her own throne? Therefore, if she lost, she would definitely die. The other empresses might not, but at least they would be a prince. Ning Shu looked at the empress who was slowly walking to the dragon throne and couldn't help but want to complain that the person who entrusted her wasn't the empress' biological daughter. Sure enough, the moment the empress arrived, the imperial censors began the impeachment meeting. All sorts of accusations were brought up, such as lack of etiquette, ignorance of discipline, servants committing murder, stupidity, inability to be enlightened, and all sorts of personal attacks were brought up. Ning Shu stood there with his head lowered. He didn't say a word and didn't defend himself. It would be too tiring to defend himself one by one. If he tried to defend himself, the other party would say, as the crown princess, you actually don't have any tolerance. Honest advice is unpleasant to the ear. If you can't even listen to honest advice, you will be a muddle-headed ruler in the future. They would tie him to the pillar of morality and whip him. He would still have to accept being spit on his face and gain a good reputation. Ning Shu was most annoyed by this kind of person who spoke so confidently and confidently. They would always talk about moral kidnapping. Ning Shu stood there like a little pitiful person and didn't say a word. The Empress looked at Prime Minister Feng and thought for a while before saying, "Oh, I remember that it's time to find someone." "How about this?" Bing Yan said that she has always admired your family's Yu Xian. "Feng Jing, how about we become in-laws?" Prime Minister Feng was speechless. Although he was mentally prepared, Prime Minister Feng's heart was still filled with grief and indignation. It was a great honor to be in-laws with the Empress. Moreover, he was marrying the crown princess. The honor was limitless. However, he still had to see if the crown princess could support him. The Empress Ning Shu said, "Look at what you have done. First, get married and find a proper husband to watch over you. Then, face the wall and reflect for a month. You are not allowed to leave the residence." Ning Shu clasped his hands in front of his chest and said, I will remember. I will definitely listen to the teacher's teachings." Even so, Fen Jiuxuan still wanted to marry her. Ning Shu felt that the Empress most likely knew about what happened in the Prime Minister's residence. He turned to look at his sisters. As expected, they all had ugly expressions. /BK Chapter 21:15. The original plan was a bit rushed. The goal was to make Prime Minister Feng hate the crown princess, and everyone felt that the peerless and elegant young Master Feng would not marry the crown princess. Abruptly Fen Jiuxuan offended the Prime Minister manner, and the crown princess position was already in danger. It was as dangerous as a pile of eggs, and one straw could break the camel's back. After all, marrying the crown princess was too much of a grievance. But for some reason, the Empress Mother really betrothed Fen Jiuxuan to the crown princess. When Her Majesty the Empress announced the engagement, the faces of the princesses were not good. Not to mention young Master Feng's background, Fen Jiuxuan's appearance was also coveted by the women in the capital. Next, they decided on the wedding date, which was arranged very close. Before the wedding, she had to face the wall and reflect. After the wedding, she had to face the wall and reflect for a month. It was clearly a marriage bestowal, but she was also grounded. Thunder and rain were the grace of the Empress, and Her Majesty the Empress gave a carrot after a stick. After that, Ning Shu began the days of not leaving the house. She was not anxious about the wedding at all. After all, there were internal court officials presiding over the wedding, and they had considered all aspects of the wedding very thoroughly. As for whether Fen Jiuxuan would marry or not, she did not care at all. Ning Shu spent a lot of time every day opening up her blocked meridians. Every time she opened them up, it was as if she had jumped into a pool of blood. Her entire body was covered in blood. With so many meridians in her body, Ning Shu felt that every day was like an abyss of suffering. Not only did she have to open up her meridians, but she also had to nourish them. She felt that her meridians had been tormented to the point of being extremely fragile. As long as she used her spiritual energy, she would feel the pain of being pricked by needles. Ning Shu did not have a good time, and Fen Jiuxuan was also unhappy. She had been schemed against to become the crown princess's official husband. It was too fucking unpleasant. With Fen Jiuxuan's status and appearance, she could even be the Empress. She was someone who could command the winds and clouds. The marriage had been bestowed. No matter how unwilling the Prime Minister Manor was, they still had to start preparing for the wedding. Soon, the Crown Princess Manor was decorated with lanterns and colored banners for the wedding. Ning Shu wore wedding clothes and sat on a tall horse to welcome the bride. When they arrived at the Feng clan, the atmosphere was as stagnant as a funeral. Prime Minister Feng looked at Ning Shu with a gaze that was as sharp as a knife. Ning Shu didn't feel any joy from being married. Even though Prime Minister Feng's eyes were terrifying, Ning Shu still insisted on marrying Fen Jiuxuan. The wedding procession stretched from one end of the street to the other. It was exceptionally bustling. The commoners who were watching the excitement lined the streets to welcome the bride. Moreover, they were all pointing at the procession and gossiping. It seemed that everyone was pitying the Prime Minister's son for marrying the Crown Princess, who had no achievements and was incomparably mediocre. From her toes to her hair, the Crown Princess exuded an air of mediocrity. She was truly unworthy of the Prime Minister's son. Ning Shu sat on the back of the horse and straightened his chest, ignoring the common people's comments about his aptitude. However, Fen Jiuxuan, who was sitting in the palanquin, felt his heart boiling like hot oil. It was difficult to disobey an imperial order, but he was extremely resistant in his heart. He had been set up from the beginning to the end. Whenever his mother talked about his marriage, she would sigh helplessly. She didn't want him to marry, but he had no choice. It was said that the Empress and the Prime Minister had a very good relationship, they were like sisters. However, the Empress was the Empress, a subject was a subject, they couldn't overstep their boundaries. Fen Jiuxuan had great ambitions in his heart. He wasn't willing to marry a woman just like that. Moreover, it wasn't the woman he liked, the woman he loved. The most disgusting one was the Crown Princess. What a disgusting woman. She didn't use her ability for important matters. She only knew how to scheme against people with a little bit of cleverness. She didn't even look at her reputation among the common people. Other than her identity as the Crown Princess, she had no other good points. Along the way, they arrived at the Crown Princess residence. After a series of complicated etiquette that made people dizzy, Ning Shu and Fen Jiuxuan became husband and wife. Ning Shu could feel that Fen Jiuxuan's body was incomparably stiff from the beginning to the end. He was very repulsed by Ning Shu's touch. As long as there was physical contact, he would immediately dodge. In addition, he had martial arts, so his body was very agile. Her Majesty the Empress gave a few instructions to Ning Shu. Her face was actually filled with joy. The people below also became more enthusiastic, and the atmosphere also became more harmonious. Ning Shu and Fen Jiuxuan toasted with people during the banquet. Even in a world where women were superior, the status of men wasn't that low. It wasn't like they couldn't see people. In a world where men were superior and women were inferior, women couldn't even leave the bedroom door. They could only stay in the bridal chamber. During the banquet, several sisters desperately drank wine. Some people's eyes drifted to Fen Jiuxuan's body. Fen Jiuxuan was dressed in red, which made his face look like jade. His face was like a jade carving. His facial features were exquisite. His long hair was like ink. His figure was tall and straight. A dragon and phoenix jade pendant hung on his waist. He was really a fairy-like figure. Looking at the Crown Princess, although her appearance wasn't bad, standing next to her, she was like dregs. Someone come, the seventh princess fainted. The seventh princess's personal maid ran to the banquet and shouted anxiously. The seventh princess was Ni Bai Wei. When Ning Shu heard this, he immediately put down his wine cup and asked, "What happened to royal sister?" Even the empress looked over here. The personal maid was so anxious that her forehead was sweating. Her Royal Highness the seventh princess was greedy for sweet wine and went to the toilet. When she came back, she passed by the pavilion and fell down the steps of the pavilion. Her Royal Highness the seventh princess' head was injured. I have already moved Her Royal Highness to the guest room. This time traveler's time of arrival was a bit strange. How could he have arrived on the day of her wedding? Moreover, it was a big day, and blood had been seen. It cast a layer of ominous shadow over people's hearts. In any case, he would have arrived sooner or later. Ning Shu hurriedly asked the doctor in the mansion to go to the guest room to check on Ni Baiwei's situation. The empress frowned and said, "Why is little Seven, this child, so greedy for wine?" The group went to the guest room, and then saw the seventh princess lying on the bed. There was blood on her forehead, and the doctor was taking her pulse. There were maids cleaning the blood and wounds on her forehead. Her forehead was injured, and it seemed that she was a bit disfigured. They didn't know if it would leave a scar. Until now, she still didn't have any intention of waking up. "Eldest royal sister, the feng shui of your crown princess mansion isn't very good, is it? Even on such a big day, there can be a bloody disaster. It may affect the relationship between you husband and wife," a royal princess said somewhat gloatingly. There was jealousy in her tone, which suddenly made Her Majesty the Empress look at her sharply. Her mouth didn't have a filter. How could she say such things in public? The royal princess suddenly didn't dare to say anything. Although she was outspoken, she also said what most people were thinking. Moreover, it could make people who were married feel uncomfortable in their hearts. Her Majesty the Empress said, "Life is for people to live. Can this little thing affect people's lives?" The royal princess immediately apologized, saying that she had said something wrong. Chapter 21:16. The purpose of a happy occasion was to be auspicious. It was indeed unlucky to see blood. Ning Shu glanced at Fenjiuxuan. His expression was cold, and he did not care about the bloody disaster at all. Ning Shu did not care about the bloody disaster at all, because there would indeed be a bloody disaster in the future. This was just an appetizer. And he did not plan to grow old with Fenjiuxuan, so he did not care about the bloody disaster at all. "When will little Seven wake up?" the Empress asked the doctor. The doctor's face was tangled, and he did not know what to say. He felt that the seventh princess pulse was getting weaker and weaker, almost disappearing. She only hurt her forehead, and there was not much blood. How could her pulse be so weak? It was about to disappear. How dare he say that the seventh princess was going to die? "Doctor, what's wrong with the seventh princess?" the other princesses asked. Ning Shu looked at little Seven's face. Soon this body would be occupied by other souls. Ning Shu glanced at Fenjiuxuan with an inexplicable look. "Your true love is coming. Hurry up and get ready to welcome her." Fenjiuxuan responded to Ning Shu's look with cold eyes, and then stood aside as if it was none of his business. He looked cold and distant. The doctor's forehead was covered in cold sweat, and the pulse disappeared. The doctor was shocked. He felt that he had never encountered such a strange thing in his many years of medical practice. The doctor pressed his hand on the pulse, as if he could feel the pulse by doing so. Looking at the doctor's troublesome look, the others did not dare to disturb him. The doctor's eyebrows could not help but twitch. The pulse that disappeared before was now beating again. It was getting stronger and stronger, and finally returned to the strength of a normal person's pulse. The disappearance of the pulse before seemed to be an illusion. Damn, he felt like he was being played. Her Highness was hit in the head. "She will wake up after a while," the doctor said with a sigh of relief. Fortunately, the seventh princess was not dead. The person on the bed, Ni Baiwei's eyes moved a few times. She opened her eyelids and looked around blankly. As a result, she saw a large group of people surrounding her and staring at her. What the hell? That was scary. Ni Baiwei was scared to death by the black mass of people in front of her. Moreover, she saw that these people were wearing luxurious clothes with glittering jewels on their heads. Could it be that they were filming? The dignified woman at the front had a strong aura that made one's heart tremble. At this moment, she was asking him, Little Seven, how are you? Who is Little Seven? Ni Baiwei felt a little uneasy and looked around for the camera. Moreover, this woman who was asking her question seemed to be her sarcastic, critical, domineering, and suffocating superior. Ni Baiwei hated this kind of domineering woman. She had endocrine disorders and looked like she couldn't get married, so she tortured her subordinates. Working under her superior was simply tough. She nitpicked and deliberately found fault with others. When Ning Shu saw Ni Baiwei's confused eyes, he knew that she had changed her mind. Ni Baiwei sized up the people in the room. Finally, her eyes focused on the man in the red wedding robe. She stared straight at him and almost drooled. Her eyes fell directly on Fenjiuxuan. Ni Baiwei had never seen such a good-looking man. This was simply a one-in-a-million male god. This male actor was really, really handsome. Ning Shu saw Ni Baiwei's love-struck look. Ignoring the others, she could not move her eyes away from Fenjiuxuan. If there were not so many people here, she would probably have screamed. Love-struck was an illness. It was really an illness. Girls liked boys when they saw them. When they saw handsome guys, they would drool or scream uncontrollably. If it was serious, it would be hyperactivity. It was a disease characterized by men or women having too much desire for sex. Little Seven. Her Majesty the Empress raised her voice a little. She fell and became stupid. She didn't even recognize her mother. Only then did Ni Baiwei reluctantly move her gaze away from Fenjiuxuan. She looked at the people around her with a strange gaze. Feng Yuxian, who had always been indifferent, suddenly felt that the seventh princess had become a little more interesting after waking up. Looking at her with a burning gaze, there was pure appreciation in her eyes. That burning gaze was something that he could not ignore even if he wanted to. Ning Shu asked, Seventh sister, what's wrong? Why aren't you replying to Mother Empress? Royal sister. She was a princess, a golden branch and jade leaf. Was this filming or had she transmigrated? But she did not recognize any of these people. Ni Baiwei's eyes darted around. Holding her head, she painfully said, My head really hurts. Fenjiuxuan saw a flash of craftiness in Ni Baiwei's eyes. He felt that this seventh princess had become very interesting. She had a bit of a naughty and charming feeling. To put it bluntly, woman, you're very interesting. You've successfully attracted my attention. Ning Shu looked at Fenjiuxuan's expression and smirked. He suddenly had a feeling that the plot was deliberately making things difficult for him. He had transmigrated when he was getting married. The previous plot was not like this. Ning Shu said to the doctor, quickly take a look at seventh sister. She has a headache. Then he said to Her Majesty the Empress, Mother Empress, it must be that Shao Qi's head was knocked on. She temporarily does not remember people. The Empress frowned. She fell so hard that she could not recognize her own mother. She could not even recognize her own siblings. Yes, yes. My head really hurts. Ni Baiwei covered her head and groaned. However, her pair of eyeballs were rolling around and she looked very intelligent. Shao Qi, do you still recognize third sister? The fourth princess asked Ni Baiwei. You are third sister. Ni Baiwei looked at the beautiful woman in front of her and said. Sure enough, you don't recognize people. Shao Qi, I am fourth sister. The fourth princess shook her head and said. Ni Baiwei, fuck, if you are fourth sister, then so be it. You just have to say you are third sister. Deep scheme. Ning Shu raised his eyebrows. The palace scheme was deep. Feng Yun, who had been indifferent, spoke first to resolve the awkwardness. She asked the doctor, is the seventh princess okay? Will she be fine after the wound on her forehead is healed? Yes. The doctor could only answer like this. As long as she was not dead, he did not know anything else. The empress looked at Xiao Qi, who was on the bed, and asked someone to send Xiao Qi back to the palace. Ni Baiwei was now afraid. She did not know anyone. If she really went back to the palace, she might as well stay here. So she held her head and said, "Headache. My headache is so bad." The doctor said, "She probably hurt her head. When she moves, she will have a headache." The empress said to Ning Shu, "Then leave Xiao Qi in your house and take good care of her." Ning Shu, staying here would make it easier for him to contact Fenjiaxuan. Life was really full of surprises. Fenjiaxuan said, "Mother Empress, the Crown Princess and I will take good care of the 7th Princess." Wow, the voice of the Prince Charming is so deep, so magnetic, so nice. Chapter 21:17. From the beginning to the end, Fenjiaxuan did not say a single word to him. After Ni Baiwei woke up, look at how active Fenjiaxuan was. There were also benefits to keeping Ni Baiwei in the residence. It was very reassuring to keep an eye on her. The only drawback was that he could not kill her directly. If a princess died in the residence of the Crown Princess, he would not be able to escape the crime of killing his sister. The wedding ended simply because of Little Seven's accident. The empress returned to the palace and the guests also left. Only Ning Shu, Fenjiaxuan, Ni Baiwei and her personal maid were left in the guest room. Ning Shu said to Ni Baiwei, "Little Seven, I am your big sister." Ni Baiwei originally wanted to call her big sister, but she was tricked previously. Who knows if this girl was her big sister? "This is my man. We just got married today. You came to attend our wedding banquet, but something happened to you." Ning Shu introduced Fenjiaxuan. Ni Baiwei, who was lying on the bed, suddenly felt as if she was struck by lightning. She stared blankly at Fenjiaxuan, who was wearing red clothes. Her Prince Charming actually got married. Married? Fenjiaxuan understood Ning Shu's words. He frowned and looked unhappy, but he did not say anything in the end. Ning Shu instructed Ni Baiwei to take care of her body and to tell the housekeeper if she needed anything. However, Ni Baiwei looked at Fenjiaxuan absent-mindedly. Without a reunion, it was really hard to be an unmarried man and woman. Before she even started to fall in love, she had already fallen out of love. Moreover, he even became her brother-in-law. She sized up Ning Shu. The woman that her Prince Charming married was not very beautiful. They did not look compatible at all. After returning to the bridal room, the next procedure was to enter the bridal room. However, Fenjiaxuan's face was as cold as ice. Celebrities did not want to make love. Ning Shu did not want to make love. Ning Shu was too lazy to touch other people's men. "Crown Princess, so many things have happened today." "Your Highness, let's go to bed," Fenjiaxuan said. Ning Shu made a sound of acknowledgement. After freshening up, he stood back to back with Fenjiaxuan. On their wedding night, Fenjiaxuan did not dare to drive Ning Shu away. The servants in the backyard were all snobbish. If the Crown Princess did not sleep with her husband on their wedding night, the next day, there would be rumors that the Prime Minister's son, who was peerlessly beautiful, had been left out. Fenjiaxuan had to consider the Feng family's reputation and his mother's face. Sleeping all the way until morning, Ning Shu stretched his body. Fenjiaxuan had already woken up. He was wearing his usual bamboo-colored clothes, which made him look even more handsome. Ning Shu greeted him coldly and then went to his study to start cultivating. In any case, he had been grounded by the Empress during this period of time, so there was no need for him to go to morning court. After cultivating, he ate some breakfast and then went to look for Master Li. Master Li's life was still very leisurely. When she had nothing to do, she would water the flowers, brew tea, and read books. Master Li was an intellectual woman. Although she had all kinds of schemes, she was very calm on the surface. Congratulations to your highness for marrying a good man, Master Li said. Ning Shu rolled his eyes. What good man? He reckoned that not long later, he would be entangled with Ni Bai Wei. Meanwhile, little 7, Ni Bai Wei, was digesting the information she had received from her personal maid. So this was not an ancient society where men were superior to women, but a world where women were superior to men. She was the empress and had a noble status. In other words, in this world, a woman could find many husbands, and it was also possible to find many men. So awesome. Ni Bai Wei was still planning to look at all kinds of handsome men, but Fen Jiaxuan's face flashed in her mind. What a handsome face that was. She was already satisfied to be able to meet such a perfect male god in her life. Thinking back, she was just an ordinary white-collar worker with ordinary looks and an ordinary salary. She did not expect to meet such a perfect male god after transmigrating. She even became the empress and did not have to worry about food and clothing for the rest of her life. Ni Bai Wei focused on finding out about Fen Jiaxuan. After understanding her elder sister's reputation, 2 words appeared in Ni Bai Wei's mind: forced marriage. To think that her elder sister was the Empress Dowager of a country. She was actually so lousy that she even used her authority to force Fen Jiaxuan to marry. Looking at Fen Jiaxuan's cold appearance, it was indeed because he was unhappy in his marriage. The Empress was really old and muddle-headed to let such a person become the Empress Dowager. The Empress Dowager was the Crown Prince, second only to one person and above everyone else. If such a person held power, it would be people like Fen Jiaxuan who would suffer. Could it be that even a good-looking man was forced to marry her? Ni Bai Wei bore the wound on her head and directly went to Fen Jiaxuan's courtyard to visit Fen Jiaxuan. Fen Jiaxuan courteously received Ni Bai Wei and prepared tea and pastries for her. Ni Bai Wei looked at Fen Jiaxuan with sparkling eyes as she ate the pastries prepared by Fen Jiaxuan. She ate until her cheeks were puffed up, looking especially cute and charming. After the 7th prince woke up, he became even more soft and cute. He did not have the strong feeling of other women and was full of feminine beauty. He was even more different from the Empress Dowager, who was so cold that she did not dare to speak. In addition to his young age, he was full of youthful aura and was incomparably lively. Fen Jiaxuan's heart suddenly became a little soft. He asked his personal servant to prepare more pastries for Ni Bai Wei. These pastries were exquisitely made and tasted very good. Ni Bai Wei found various topics to chat with Fen Jiaxuan, and then she found that her Prince Charming was really very knowledgeable and knew how to write poems and songs. Fen Jiaxuan found that the 7th princess's words were particularly interesting. 1 or 2 new words would always pop out of her mouth, which sounded lively and witty. Why didn't he find her so interesting before? Ning Shu came out from Master Li's courtyard and heard the servant say that Ni Bai Wei bore the injury and went to Fen Jiaxuan's courtyard. He heard that she did not come out even after chatting for a while. Ning Shu laughed in his heart and did not say anything. Like this, she was not afraid of tetanus, which would leave a scar if the wind blew. He heard that there was also food and drink. She was injured, so she should avoid certain foods. He did not know what she ate at Fen Jiaxuan's courtyard. Ning Shu did not go to Fen Jiaxuan's courtyard. Instead, he returned to his study room and began to cultivate. Then, he began to open up his meridians like a foolish old man moving a mountain. Ning Shu opened up a meridian that led to his dantian. This way, he could store spiritual energy in his dantian. While opening up his meridians, he could store spiritual energy and increase his strength. Because they were newlyweds, Fen Jiaxuan would ask someone to invite Ning Shu to his courtyard to eat. At this time, Ni Bai Wei would rely on her tender face and young age to eat with them. Originally, it was 2 people eating, but now there were 3 people at the table. Ning Shu picked up some food with heavy pigments, such as scallions, ginger, and garlic, and gave it to Ni Bai Wei. Eating these things would easily leave a scar. It seemed that Ni Bai Wei was a person with a heavy appetite. She liked eating these dishes very much. Ni Baiwei looked at Fenjiuxuan while eating. Looking at the cold and lifeless Fenjiuxuan, she felt that it was all because her elder sister did not treat him well. This was not a happy marriage. Chapter 21:18. Ning Shu looked at Ni Baiwei. At the table, Ni Baiwei and Fenjiuxuan had eye contact. Because Ning Shu was present, it was not very obvious. Ning Shu ate. This was why she wanted to marry Fenjiuxuan. If it was not for this layer of relationship, the relationship between Ni Baiwei and Fenjiuxuan would be even more obvious. Fenjiuxuan had not fallen in love with Ni Baiwei yet, but he felt that Ni Baiwei was a very interesting girl. Moreover, she was younger than Fenjiuxuan. Currently, Ni Baiwei was only 14 years old, 2 years away from adulthood. Fenjiuxuan had not fallen in love with Ni Baiwei yet. However, love always starts with interest. Ning Shu asked Ni Baiwei, whose cheeks were stuffed, "Little Seven, is your wound better?" Ni Baiwei touched the wound on her forehead and smiled at Ning Shu. "I am much better, thank you for your concern. Big brother-in-law is also very good to me." Ni Baiwei smiled at Fenjiuxuan, revealing her white teeth. Fenjiuxuan's hand that was holding the chopsticks trembled, but he acted as if nothing had happened and picked up the food. After that, Ni Baiwei and Fenjiuxuan became even closer. Ni Baiwei felt that Fenjiuxuan was a lonely man. Marrying a woman like her big sister should be very unhappy. Moreover, they were very unfamiliar with each other. How could this be the appearance of newlyweds? Fenjiuxuan often stood in the pavilion and played the jade flute. His voice was mellow and distant, causing Ni Baiwei's heart to ache. She felt very distressed. The two often drank tea together. Ni Baiwei looked at Fenjiuxuan like a little fangirl as he played the jade flute. Gradually, there were rumors in the Crown Princess residence. They said that the Crown Princess's principal husband and the 7th princess were very close and that there was something going on between the two. When Ning Shu heard these rumors, she pretended not to know anything. She completely ignored them and did not question Fenjiuxuan. She and Fenjiuxuan were not husband and wife. Ning Shu acted as if she hadn't noticed anything. She looked like an idiot. Even the servants of the Crown Princess's residence felt strange when they saw Ning Shu's expression. Ning Shu, why is the world green? Ning Shu and Fenjiuxuan did not consummate their marriage. Both of them had their own thoughts, which strangely maintained the current situation. Ning Shu had more important things to do, and that was to take advantage of the recent confinement to solve the problem of his meridians and slowly cultivate. Everything had to wait until he was strong enough, then he could slowly plan for now. However, the rumors in the backyard were getting louder and louder. They were all talking about the things between Ni Baiwei and Fenjiuxuan. The two of them were too frequent. Fenjiuxuan began to slowly refuse to interact with Ni Baiwei. How could he not know the rumors in the backyard? Even the Prime Minister's residence, where he was from, had sent him a letter, asking him to be careful of his influence. Now there were even rumors in the streets. Fenjiuxuan frowned. He and the 7th princess were innocent. Some bored people's brains were filled with rubbish. Ni Baiwei saw Fenjiuxuan less and less. Every time she came to visit Fenjiuxuan, he was either resting or busy. In short, he refused to see her. Ni Baiwei knew why Fenjiuxuan did not want to see her. She suddenly cursed in her heart. She had never seen such a free person who stared at others and said bad things every day. If these words were passed to her sister, she did not know how she would treat Fenjiuxuan. The men in this world were so pitiful. People like Fenjiuxuan, who was well-read and talented, could only be trapped in such a place. He could contribute to the country, but now he was thrown into the backyard by a cruel woman and depressed every day. She could not let her sister misunderstand Fenjiuxuan. This world had requirements for a man's reputation. Her Prince Charming could not be criticized behind his back every day because of her. Therefore, Ni Baiwei came to find Ning Shu to explain the rumors. Ning Shu heard from his personal maid that the seventh princess was waiting outside the door. Ning Shu raised his eyebrows, put down the brush, and put away the paper to practice writing. She was imitating the handwriting of the client. Everyone's handwriting was like their face. No one was exactly the same. If her handwriting was different, it would be suspicious. Moreover, she would have to submit a memorial. The Empress's mother should be the one who was most familiar with her handwriting. Why was Ni Baiwei looking for her? Ning Shu let Ni Baiwei in. When Ni Baiwei came in, she sweetly greeted Ning Shu. Ning Shu asked, "Little Seven, why are you looking for me?" Ni Baiwei hesitated for a moment and asked, "Sister, do you love brother-in-law?" "What's there to love?" "He's my legal husband," Ning Shu said, avoiding the topic. "Since sister loves brother-in-law, then you have to believe brother-in-law. Don't listen to the servant's nonsense." Ni Baiwei said, "Moreover, I am not an adult yet. These people's thoughts are too dirty." Ning Shu did not comment and said, "I don't care. It's good that sister is not angry. The servants are just gossiping. You have to believe brother-in-law." Ni Baiwei said. Ning Shu nodded. "Don't worry about these things. Take good care of your body. If you are injured, don't run around. If something happens to you, Mother Empress will blame me." Ning Shu walked around the desk and patted Ni Baiwei's shoulder. "Don't worry about these things. Take good care of your injuries." Ni Baiwei's shoulder was knocked askew by Ning Shu's pat. She felt that Ning Shu's hand was very heavy. Her heart trembled. She felt that she should not have come today. Ni Baiwei hated office fights the most. Sometimes, she would be pushed out by her colleagues to take the blame. Sometimes, she would be made difficult by her female superiors who had endocrine disorders. Her fighting spirit was not very sharp. Now, she realized that she should not have come to find Sister Empress. What if Sister Empress made things difficult for Fenjiuxuan? If she spoke up for Fenjiuxuan, Sister Empress would feel that she had an affair with Fenjiuxuan. Sigh. Why did Prince Charming marry such a person? Ning Shu extended his hand and touched the wound on Ni Baiwei's forehead. Ni Baiwei immediately shivered. She felt that Ning Shu's hand had static electricity. The wound was a little numb and painful. Ning Shu tilted his head and looked at the wound. He withdrew his hand and sighed. "Little Seven, you can't be greedy anymore. Otherwise, it will leave a scar." I know." Ni Baiwei walked away in a sorry state. Ning Shu rolled his eyes. With this kind of fighting strength, it was no wonder that the throne was given to Fenjiuxuan. Ning Shu did not care about what happened in the backyard, nor did he blame Fenjiuxuan. Seeing Ning Shu's attitude, Ni Baiwei suddenly felt that Sister Empress had a good point. At least, she was not so narrow-minded. However, if Sister Empress could tolerate this kind of thing, didn't it mean that she did not love Fenjiuxuan at all? Since she did not love Fenjiuxuan, why did she marry him? Wasn't this insulting him? Pitiful Prince Charming. The men in this world were really pitiful. People like Fenjiuxuan wasted his talent. He could not decide his own marriage and married a woman who did not love him. Chapter 21:19. Ni Baiwei truly loved her Prince Charming. When she was chatting with Fenjiuxuan, they talked about a place where men and women were equal and where men could achieve great things. Men could be emperors, men could be officials, men could be outside, women could be inside. Fenjiuxuan didn't have any expression on his face, but his eyes were filled with yearning and desire. Seeing that Ning Shu didn't make a fuss, Ni Baiwei also openly interacted with Fenjiuxuan. However, it wasn't in Fenjiuxuan's courtyard, but in the pavilion or the garden. There were many maids and servants around them, and they were very open. Even so, it was strange for a brother-in-law and sister-in-law to interact like this. Therefore, the rumors were still spreading. Because Ning Shu's reputation wasn't good, the rumors were even worse. Fenjiuxuan could only stay in his courtyard and didn't step out. It was also very difficult for him to see Ni Baiwei. This made Ni Baiwei feel very uncomfortable. Of course, this discomfort wasn't directed at Fenjiuxuan, but at this world where women were superior. Everyone was equal, so why was it so strict that men couldn't even step out of their courtyards? Ning Shu's confinement time was up, and he went to the court. After the court, he was asked to stay by the Empress. The Empress sat on the dragon throne and looked down at Ning Shu, appearing very dignified. The Empress, who had given birth to many children, had wrinkles at the corners of her eyes. However, this didn't affect her beauty and majesty at all. "How is little Seven doing in the Crown Princess residence?" the Empress asked. Ning Shu immediately said, "She's doing very well. It's just that she doesn't really avoid eating, so her wounds are healing a little slowly. I've already asked the doctor to take a look at her repeatedly." The Empress nodded. "How are you getting along with your husband?" Ning Shu said, "She's doing very well." The Empress was speechless. "Do you know about the rumors on the streets?" Ning Shu nodded. "Your son has been under house arrest for a period of time. I've been staying in the residence. The rumors outside are just rumors. I'm innocent." The corners of the Empress's mouth twitched. She knew that this daughter of hers was a coward, but she hadn't expected her daughter to be so cowardly. As far as she knew, Shao Qi indeed liked to look for the men of the Feng clan, but this daughter of hers, the Empress rubbed her temples and said to Ning Shu, "There is no smoke without fire. Pay more attention and get along well with Fenjiuxuan. Don't neglect him." Ning Shu nodded. Then, he cupped his hands and left the hall. Ning Shu returned home. As soon as Ning Shu arrived home, the imperial physician and imperial bodyguards arrived, saying that they were here to treat the seventh princess. Ning Shu pursed her lips. Her mother was really paranoid. All she did was say that Shao Qi's wound wasn't good, and she immediately sent an imperial physician over, thinking that someone was trying to harm Shao Qi. Ning Shu allowed the imperial physician to check the pot and the dregs of the medicine. She would only do it on the medicine if she spilled it. It would be easy to be discovered, and the effect might not be good. The imperial physician applied the palace's ointment on Ni Baiwei. It could remove the scar and heal the wound quickly. The imperial bodyguards informed Ni Baiwei of the Empress's decree, which was to let the seventh princess return to the palace to recuperate. There were imperial physicians in the palace, and the conditions were good in all aspects. Probably because of the rumors, the Empress had a knot in her heart. Now, the best way was to not let the two of them come into contact. One was her own daughter, and the other was the son of an important minister. It would be a joke if they were to cause trouble. When Ni Baiwei heard that she had to return to the palace, she was unwilling. If she went back, she wouldn't be able to see her Prince Charming. It would be difficult for her to come out again in the future. Ni Baiwei immediately pulled Ning Shu's hand. "Big sister, I don't want to go back. If I go back, Empress Mother will take care of me. I can't go anywhere, big sister." Ni Baiwei acted coquettishly to Ning Shu. Ning Shu pulled out his sleeve from Ni Baiwei's hand and said, "Shao Qi, it's better to go back. The wound on your forehead is troublesome. Do you want it to leave a scar?" "Shao Qi, listen to me." Ni Baiwei could only reluctantly leave the Crown Princess residence. She kept looking back. Why didn't her Prince Charming come to send her off? She didn't even get to see him for the last time. Sigh. Even if she went back to the palace, Ni Baiwei would think of ways to come to the Crown Princess residence. There were all kinds of strange reasons, such as missing the pastries of the Crown Princess residence. She was familiar with the bed after sleeping on it for more than a month. Ning Shu immediately packed the bed that Ni Baiwei slept on and sent it to the palace. Since she wasn't used to it, he would give it to her. Ni Baiwei was speechless. Her big sister was really stubborn. The smart Fenjiuxuan also had a headache. This girl was naive and cute, but she didn't know the danger. There were already rumors outside. If this continued, even if his mother was the prime minister, something would happen. However, this girl came to find him despite all the difficulties, which made him feel warm. Big sister, I like this bird. Can you give it to me? Ni Baiwei pointed at the birdcage hanging by the window. Inside the cage was a small and cute bird with yellow and black feathers. It had a red beak and fluffy feathers. It was indeed cute and was jumping in the cage. Ning Shu narrowed his eyes and said, "This belongs to your big brother-in-law. If you want it, you have to ask him." Today was another lunch for the three of them. Ni Baiwei stayed to eat. "Big brother-in-law, can you give it to me? I like it." Ni Baiwei said to Fenjiuxuan. Fenjiuxuan looked at Ning Shu. Ning Shu just held his bowl and didn't say anything. Fenjiuxuan had to say, "Crown Princess." Ning Shu put down his chopsticks. "This is yours. If you want to give it to me, then give it to me." "Thank you, big brother-in-law." Ni Baiwei immediately smiled and walked to the front of the birdcage to play with the bird. Fenjiuxuan glanced at Ni Baiwei and then looked away. At night, Ning Shu sat by the window. He was cultivating and releasing his spiritual power while waiting for something. In the middle of the night, a bird broke into the range of Ning Shu's spiritual power. This bird was fluffy and had something tied to its feet. It went straight to Fenjiuxuan's courtyard. Fenjiuxuan was smart. He let Ni Baiwei ask for something in front of her. This way, it wouldn't be a private exchange. At least, the thing had passed through her hands, so it wouldn't be a gift from Fenjiuxuan to Ni Baiwei. Maybe one day, the thing would be found by someone. They would say that the bird had spirituality and found it on its own. Moreover, this thing was relatively small, only the size of a half-grown child's fist. It wasn't very eye-catching. Even if someone saw it, they would think it was an ordinary bird. Ni Baiwei asking for something in that situation must have been taught by Fenjiuxuan. Ning Shu propped up his chin. This kind of messenger bird was a bit romantic. After a while, the bird flew out of Fenjiuxuan's courtyard. Ning Shu directly used his spiritual power to grab the bird and pulled it in front of him. The bird struggled violently and chirped, trying to break free from Ning Shu's hand. Ning Shu took the small piece of paper from the bird's feet. The paper was very small, and the words written on it were also very small. Fenjiuxuan's handwriting was good, and the content was relatively clear. There wasn't anything exciting. Chapter 21:20. Ning Shu was a little disappointed. He thought that he would see some mushy words that would cause his blood to boil. It was just a simple greeting. It also warned Ni Baiwei to be careful in the palace. People's hearts were unpredictable. Ning Shu dipped the brush in ink and copied down the content. He then put the paper back and released the bird. Ning Shu washed her hands and put away the content she had copied. Every night, other than cultivating, Ning Shu had to copy down the content. The content changed from a simple greeting to a caring and ambiguous one. Wasn't saying goodnight to each other something couples did? Ni Baiwei would tell Fenjiuxuan whatever troubles she had, and Fenjiuxuan would give her a solution. He would let her know how to deal with the servants who committed crimes and how to face the empress. Where could she find such a good pen pal? When Ning Shu copied the content, he felt that it was very interesting. He told Ni Baiwei how to use her heart. Ni Baiwei's reply was full of praises for Fenjiuxuan. Her admiration for him was overflowing. Her love was overflowing between the lines. Recently, Ni Baiwei was more favored by the Empress. She would reward her with something when she was free. When she was free, she would make some strange things for the Empress. She would also make some novel foods. These foods even caused a food trend in the capital. Even the Empress liked it. Ordinary people also wanted to try it. However, Ni Baiwei didn't do anything out of line. She would ask the Empress to let her out of the palace to play. She looked like a child. The Empress unintentionally asked Little Seven if she wanted to be the Empress. Little Seven immediately shook her head. She said that she was like a free prince who didn't have to worry about food and clothing. It was enough to have food, drink, and play. Being the Empress was so tiring. Why should she suffer so much? There were probably many people who were thinking about the throne under her skin. Suddenly, there was a child who didn't care about the throne. This made the Empress feel a little emotional. After all, they were her children. If anything happened to them, she wouldn't feel good. If these children were like Little Seven and didn't fight for anything, there wouldn't be a situation of sisters killing each other. The other princesses did not care much about Ni Baiwei. They only cooked some food to please their mother. Moreover, she was not even 16 years old. Ni Baiwei was very interested in ancient things. When she had nothing to do, she would sneak out of the palace to buy things. Her Majesty the Empress was very generous. Every time, she would give Ni Baiwei some money and let her go out to buy things. After a period of time, Ning Shu had copied a thick stack of content. Suddenly, he felt that the bird was very pitiful. It flew every day. He did not know if it was an illusion, but Ning Shu felt that the bird had become thinner. How could it not have the strength to deliver a letter? Ning Shu injected a trace of spiritual energy into the bird's body. The frightened bird, which was caught by Ning Shu, suddenly became spirited and became closer to Ning Shu. Come on, fly. This kind of bird was tamed by someone. It could deliver letters. Its appearance was similar to ordinary birds and would not attract attention. To tame a bird, it took time, effort, and money. Fenjiuxuan was really rich. He probably had some capable people under him. Ning Shu and Fenjiuxuan lived in harmony. The two of them were cold. Occasionally, when they ate together, the two of them would not say a word. Ning Shu would leave after eating. Fenjiuxuan also did not let Ning Shu stay. The two of them brewed together to maintain the current situation. The bird is not here anymore, but you still keep the bird food. Ning Shu looked at the small plate on the table by the window. There was bird food in it. Fenjiuxuan was very calm and casually explained, the previous bird was given to the seventh princess. Now that I want to catch a bird, there will always be a greedy bird that will eat this thing. At that time, I will be able to catch it. Ning Shu raised his eyebrows and said, so it is used to catch birds. Fenjiuxuan nodded. He was calm and had an extraordinary temperament. Ning Shu just smiled indifferently and left Fenjiuxuan's courtyard. After many times, the bird seemed to have learned. Every time it delivered a letter, it would first go to Ning Shu's courtyard. When Ning Shu was done, it would fly to Fenjiuxuan's courtyard. As a reward, Ning Shu would sometimes inject some spiritual energy into the bird. Spiritual energy was something that creatures instinctively wanted to absorb, and it was the same for birds. Ning Shu wrote on the paper, there is something rebellious in the crown princess's residence. Then he tied the paper to the bird's leg. Ning Shu released the bird. The bird flew directly to the direction of the palace and did not pass by Fenjiuxuan's courtyard. In the palace, when Ni Baiwei saw the note, her hand trembled and she quickly wrote a reply. Why did Prince Charming say this? When Ning Shu received the reply, he imitated Fenjiuxuan's handwriting and replied, "If something happens to the crown princess, I can leave her." Ning Shu injected spiritual energy into the bird's body. Ning Shu felt that the bird's heart was about to break down. Ni Baiwei's heart skipped a beat. It was a good thing that Prince Charming could leave the first imperial sister. However, if something happened to the crown princess, would Prince Charming be able to escape? Husband and wife were one. Moreover, when she watched TV, she often heard about the execution of the entire clan. Although it was the imperial family and the entire clan would not be executed, something might happen to Prince Charming. Should she say this to the Empress? Ning Shu taught Ni Baiwei in detail how to tell the Empress. She just had to say how she found something strange in the crown princess's residence while she was staying there. Ni Baiwei was conflicted. She was hesitating whether she should do this or not. If there was really something treacherous in the crown princess's residence, what if Fenjiuxuan was implicated? Ning Shu also talked about how the crown princess was cruel and blah blah blah. Such an heir would be a disaster for the country. It would be a misfortune for the people of the Li state. When the time came, the Li state would be in continuous war and the people would be in a terrible situation. Ning Shu looked at the contents of the note. She was really good at making fun of herself. Ni Baiwei looked at the contents of the note and decided to tell the Empress. Moreover, Ni Baiwei believed in Prince Charming. After all, he was very smart. Ni Baiwei prepared some food and sent it to the Empress. Then, she saw a jade seal on the Empress's table and asked, "Mother Empress, what is this?" "The imperial jade seal." Ni Baiwei looked at it and said casually, "The imperial jade seal looks like this. I saw something like this at the first imperial sister's place. It looks quite similar." The Empress put down the lotus seed porridge and asked indifferently, "Oh, it looks very similar. It looks very similar. I even saw the first imperial sister stamping it." Ni Baiwei was not afraid at all. Although her heart was trembling, she still looked casual. "But it doesn't look like it when I look carefully." Ni Baiwei shook her head and said. The Empress's expression was indifferent. She said to Ni Baiwei, "You are done eating. Go out. I have to deal with government affairs." Ni Baiwei was anxious. She did not know if the Empress had listened to her. Chapter 21-21. Mother Empress, is your appetite not good? You haven't eaten much. Government affairs have to be dealt with every day. Your health is more important, Ni Baiwei asked the Empress. I'm not that hungry. Go down. The Empress's gaze made Ni Baiwei feel as if she had fallen into an ice cellar. Ni Baiwei quickly took the food box and left. The Empress reached out and stroked the imperial jade seal. Ning Shu received a letter from Ni Baiwei, saying that she had already told the Empress about this matter. In the end, she also said that she was frightened by the Empress and that the Empress's gaze was a little scary. Since Ni Baiwei had already told the Empress, Ning Shu felt that he should also make some preparations. As a suspicious Empress, Ning Shu felt that the Empress would definitely send people to investigate the matter. Ning Shu originally thought that the Empress would send people to investigate. He didn't expect that she would come to the Crown Princess residence with great fanfare, saying that she was here to see him. Ning Shu was speechless. It was a little scary to bring so many guards to see him. Ni Baiwei was beside the Empress. Ni Baiwei had also come to join in the fun. Ning Shu felt that Ni Baiwei's heart was quite big. At this time, she actually still had the mind to join in the fun. Ni Baiwei probably wanted to take the opportunity to see Fenjiuxuan. She did something bad, but she didn't feel guilty at all. She was standing on the side of justice. She represented the righteous little sister to eliminate the cruel crown princess. The Empress said, "Recently, the palace has not been peaceful. There have been assassins. Later, let the guards check your residence. Every Empress residence has to be checked. While they were at it, they would also check the residences of all the officials in the capital city. It would be best if they were more obedient and trembling with fear. Ning Shu immediately said, "Thank you for your concern, Empress. Has the assassin been caught?" The Empress took a sip of tea and shook her head. Ning Shu sat below the Empress with his head lowered and didn't say anything. Ni Baiwei was beside him looking for interesting topics to chat about to prevent the atmosphere from becoming awkward. Ning Shu drank his tea and listened to Ni Baiwei. The Empress didn't say anything either. Ni Baiwei's voice gradually became softer as she spoke. The two of them had the same indifferent expression, making others unable to speak. The atmosphere became stagnant just like that. Ni Baiwei felt extremely uncomfortable. This atmosphere made her feel as though she was sitting on pins and needles. She even held her breath, and the sound of a needle dropping could be heard in the room. The Empress sat at the head of the table and tapped her finger lightly on the table. The tapping sound was very rhythmic and made people feel very depressed. It was as if she was tapping on their own hearts. Ning Shu sipped his tea and waited for the results of the search. Ni Baiwei was about to suffocate from waiting. Why was there still no result? Was it that difficult to find such a large piece of jade? Even a needle should be able to find it. In the end, the Imperial Guard finally came in. Fenjiuxuan also came in with him. There were two Imperial Guards behind Fenjiuxuan, forming a triangular formation. From the looks of it, they were escorting Fenjiuxuan. When Ni Baiwei saw Fenjiuxuan, her eyes lit up. She was excited, but in front of the Empress, she didn't dare to show too much affection. Ni Baiwei remembered that Fenjiuxuan told her that it was because of her close relationship with Fenjiuxuan that the Empress brought her back to the palace. "Your Majesty, this is a letter that was received in the room of the Crown Princess Principal Husband." It was with. The Imperial Guard glanced at Ni Baiwei. "Let me see it," the Empress said indifferently. When Ni Baiwei saw the small slip of paper, her head exploded. The first thing that came to her mind was whether it would bring any trouble to Fenjiuxuan. She didn't expect that Fenjiuxuan would actually keep the slip of paper. Ni Baiwei actually felt sweet in her heart. Fenjiuxuan's face was somewhat pale, but his expression was still calm as he looked at the Empress. The Empress was currently reading one slip of paper after another. The Empress was expressionless, and it was hard to tell if she was angry or not. Ning Shu had a face of curiosity and a bit of fear. He didn't understand these slips of paper. While the Empress was reading the slips of paper, she glanced at Ni Baiwei's body. Ni Baiwei's body gradually turned cold. She didn't know how many slips of paper Fenjiuxuan had left behind. Ni Baiwei comforted herself. Even if the slips of paper talked about the Imperial Jade Seal, it could still be considered as Fenjiuxuan's contribution. He had achieved his goal of revealing the Crown Princess' true face. Fenjiuxuan could be considered to have placed righteousness before family. It shouldn't be a problem, right? It shouldn't be a problem, it shouldn't be a problem. Ni Baiwei comforted herself in her heart. If she had known that Fenjiuxuan would be hurt, she wouldn't have done such a thing. Fenjiuxuan had told her about the situation in the court. All the princesses wanted to pull the crown princess down from her position. "Little Seven, come and take a look. Did you write these slips of paper?" The Empress said to Ni Baiwei. She didn't seem angry. But for some reason, Ni Baiwei's heart was shaking. Even her body was shaking uncontrollably. She wiped the cold sweat from her palms and took the slips of paper to have a look. They were all her handwriting. "My queen, this was, found in the crown princess room." Another guard came in, holding something wrapped in brocade cloth. He handed it to the Empress. The Empress glanced at Ning Shu. She untied the cloth and saw the Imperial Jade Seal. The Empress picked up the imperial jade seal and examined it. Ning Shu's face was filled with shock. She hurriedly knelt down and cried out in grief, "Imperial Mother, I am innocent. I don't know about this thing at all." The Empress's expression was cold. She didn't get angry. She just asked the guards to search the other princesses and officials' houses. If they were going to put on a show, they had to go all the way. Ning Shu was on the ground, shaking. The Empress stood up and walked past Ning Shu with the imperial jade seal. She said, "Why are you so careless?" I. Ning Shu was speechless. The Empress looked at Fenjiuxuan and said, "But it's hard to guard against a thief in your own house. You are a crown princess, and you have no achievements outside. You can't even manage your own land." Ning Shu was speechless. "Little 7, let's go back to the palace," the Empress said to the pale Ni Baiwei. Oh. Ni Baiwei stood up in a panic and followed the Empress away. Ning Shu stood up and patted the dust off his body. He looked at Fenjiuxuan and asked, "I want to know what is going on." Fenjiuxuan shook his head. "I don't know." He really didn't know what was going on. Ni Baiwei gave him notes, and every time she read them, she would burn them. But for some reason, these things appeared in his room. He didn't know what was on the notes. Fenjiuxuan really wanted to rub his face. Did something happen to Ni Baiwei? Was she being used to deal with the crown princess? Fenjiuxuan had to admit that he and the crown princess were in the same boat. If something happened to the crown princess, he wouldn't be able to turn things around. What made Fenjiuxuan feel relieved was that the Empress hadn't done anything yet. That meant she didn't want to abolish the crown princess. She still wanted to use the crown princess to control the other princesses. "Whose notes are these?" Ning Shu asked Fenjiuxuan. His face was green. Chapter 21-22. Ning Shu looked as if he had been fed a pile of shit. He asked Fenjiuxuan, "Can I know what happened?" Fenjiuxuan was also at a loss. Who knew what had happened, but he was sure of one thing. He had been set up. Every time he burned the note, it would appear in his room again. Feng Yuxuan rubbed the space between his eyebrows. His martial arts skills were not bad. Who had come to his room and put things in? "So, you have been communicating with the 7th princess?" Ning Shu sat down and asked expressionlessly. Fenjiuxuan took a breath and knelt in front of Ning Shu. He said, "I have been communicating with the 7th princess, but they are all ordinary words. Your Highness, please understand." "Oh, I understand. Then why are you communicating with a princess?" Ning Shu asked again. "You have to kneel here for a long time. You are not allowed to eat or drink. Also, you are not willing to sleep with me. I don't say anything. It turns out that your heart belongs to someone else." Ning Shu patted Fenjiuxuan's shoulder heavily. "Do you think that I, the crown princess, can be bullied by anyone?" Yuxuan does not think so. Fenjiuxuan kowtowed and said with forbearance. "Oh, then why did you send letters to the 7th princess? And the thing that the Mother Empress found? Who put it there? So, do you want to sink the ship that is the crown princess's residence, or have you found a new ship?" Ning Shu asked with a smile. "Since I have married into the crown princess's mansion, I will live and die with your highness. I have never thought of putting your highness in danger. I know you are not reconciled. In the prime minister's mansion, you should know who is scheming against you and me. You feel wronged by marrying me. I don't ask anything of you, but you colluded with outsiders to frame me." Ning Shu grabbed Fenjiuxuan's hand and twisted Fenjiuxuan's arm into a strange angle. Fenjiuxuan let out a muffled groan, and his arm fell limply to his side. Fenjiuxuan lowered his head and said, "Thank you for your grace, your highness." Fenjiuxuan's forehead was covered in cold sweat, which flowed to his long eyelashes and finally fell to the ground. Ning Shu sneered, "You feel wronged and wronged. If you hadn't written to the 7th princess, this wouldn't have happened." Fenjiuxuan was a proud and arrogant person. Being treated like this, he would definitely feel aggrieved and suffocated. "Kneel." Ning Shu snorted as he passed by Fenjiuxuan. Sooner or later, he would cripple his martial arts. There was also the 7th princess, who preached that everyone was equal. Since everyone was equal, how could she order servants around? Wasn't everyone equal? Everyone was born free, but it was impossible to say that everyone was equal. In the world Ning Shu experienced, even in modern society, there was the law of the jungle. You could only work hard to strengthen yourself, make yourself more competitive, and adapt to all kinds of life and work. There was no such thing as absolute fairness. The only fair thing was that if you wanted to get something, you had to work hard to fight for it. Therefore, Ni Baiwei must not be allowed to ascend the throne. Ning Shu didn't believe that the Empress didn't have a knot in her heart after what happened today. Ni Baiwei, who had always said that she wanted to be an idol prince, colluded with the crown princess's husband to frame the crown princess. The good impression that Ni Baiwei had collapsed, and the possibility of Ni Baiwei becoming the empress was relatively small. If she had used her own power to frame the crown princess, it would have been fine, but she had colluded with the crown princess's husband. Her Majesty probably hated her for failing to live up to her expectations, and was cursing her for being a good-for-nothing in her heart. Fenjiuxuan knelt in the hall for an entire day, and his arm was dislocated by Ning Shu. The pain was unbearable, but Fenjiuxuan kept standing straight and straightened his back. The servants of the crown princess residence were looking at Fenjiuxuan, and they were whispering. Fenjiuxuan was the son of the prime minister, and he had been favored by the heavens since young. He had never been humiliated like this. When it came to Fenjiuxuan, who didn't say that he was a good man, a peerless talent, and stood out among the crowd? Now that he was being pointed at, Fenjiuxuan's body was trembling, and the servant beside him was very anxious. He wanted to help Fenjiuxuan up, but Fenjiuxuan refused and insisted on kneeling, even if his face was pale. If it weren't for his martial arts, an ordinary person would have collapsed long ago. Ning Shu was talking to Master Li in the study, and Master Li comforted Ning Shu about being cuckolded. Look at a person's heart. Fenjiuxuan is dissatisfied with you based on the rumors outside. Marrying the crown princess is not a disgrace to him. The crown princess was second only to one person, and above tens of thousands. She was the heir to a country. Could it be that he was going to marry Her Majesty the Empress? At that time, he despised the Empress for being old enough to be his mother. Ning Shu didn't care at all, but he still said, "I'm useless." Master Li smiled. "How is that useless? You're not outstanding, not making mistakes. This is what His Highness should do. As for the things found in your study, Her Majesty probably won't do anything to you, but you will be scolded by Her Majesty," Master Li said. "I'm used to being scolded." Ning Shu didn't seem to mind. His personal maid came in and bowed. "Your Highness, the servant next to the crown princess husband said that his body can't hold on anymore." Ning Shu grunted. "Then there's no need to kneel." The maid left. Master Li said, "Why do I feel like something is wrong? Why did the husband leave the things with him?" Ning Shu said, "Maybe someone found a breakthrough from the 7th princess and framed me." Master Li thought for a moment, then looked at Ning Shu. "Your Highness, why do I feel like this matter, Master Li, why are you looking at me?" "I'd be stupid to be cuckolded," Ning Shu said. Master Li fanned himself with a round fan embroidered with butterflies and flowers. He shook his head and said, "Your Highness, you must remember to protect yourself. Her Majesty is actually a very soft-hearted person. She loves her children very much. As for the situation of several parties fighting, it was deliberately caused by her. However, the final decision is still in her hands." Rather than fighting with the other princesses, it's better to face the Empress directly and start with her. No one wants to see their children kill each other. Your Highness, don't easily provoke and frame the other princesses. Her Majesty will see this. As for the Imperial Jade Seal, Her Majesty will take responsibility for you. Ning Shu nodded. I understand. Thank you, Masterly. When Fenjiaxuan's servant heard that his master could be pardoned, he immediately ran back to help Fenjiaxuan up. Fenjiaxuan had been kneeling for too long. His knees were numb, and his lower body was numb. When Fenjiaxuan stood up, he staggered and almost fell to the ground. The servant helped Fenjiaxuan sit down in a chair and rubbed Fenjiaxuan's legs. Fenjiaxuan's arm was hanging down. Every time he moved, it hurt. Fenjiaxuan endured the pain and straightened his arm. Chapter 21-23. Fenjiaxuan was in so much pain that he was sweating profusely. He was panting heavily, and his hair was wet with sweat. He looked very miserable. The servant said with some anger, Young master, when have you ever suffered like this? You married into the crown princess house, and the crown princess gave you the cold shoulder. Now, you have to kneel for so long. I don't know if it will leave a lasting illness. Don't talk about this in the future, Fenjiaxuan said sternly. Even in front of me, you can't talk about this. If someone else hears, I don't know what kind of trouble it will cause. The servant immediately said, I know. I won't speak carelessly. Fenjiaxuan felt the numbness in his leg gradually disappear. He stood up and left. He didn't know who did this. Fenjiaxuan frowned. Everyone had their suspicions. Very few people knew that Ni Baiwei was writing letters. The time of writing was at night, and the tool was a bird. It was not easy to discover. Someone on Ni Baiwei's side must have found out. There were many eyes in the palace. Someone must have noticed Ni Baiwei's strange behavior. He also didn't know what was on those notes. Perhaps there was something extra that was used as a pretext to make a fuss. However, the fact that he and Ni Baiwei were writing letters was irrefutable. Fenjiaxuan sighed. Sometimes, he felt that Ni Baiwei was naive and cute. She was different from other strong women. However, when it came to matters, he felt that Ni Baiwei was a bit stupid. As expected, there was no such thing as having the best of both worlds. Fenjiaxuan even suspected that this matter had something to do with the crown princess. However, this kind of thing was difficult and unrewarding. Fenjiaxuan had a headache. His leg hurt, and his arm hurt. Even though his bones were set, it still hurt. The crown princess was very heavy-handed. Fenjiaxuan was grounded in the courtyard. He had to wait for Ning Shu to say when he could come out. Only then could he step out of the courtyard. The next day, during the court session, the Empress found a mistake and scolded Prime Minister Feng. The Empress was very generous. In addition to the drought in the north, she directly sent Prime Minister Feng to deal with the disaster relief. Prime Minister Feng was also dumbfounded. He was like a little flower that was being ravaged by the storm in the Empress's storm. Prime Minister Feng didn't know what had happened yesterday. As a result, he was scolded badly in the morning court. He didn't know what had happened, but one thing was for sure. Her Majesty was in a bad mood. Her period was here. Ning Shu lowered his head and pursed his lips. Her Majesty the Empress was quite protective, but that was also true. Her own daughter had been bullied, how could she not seek revenge? After the Queen lost her temper, she calmed down a little and said to Ning Shu, Go to the Ministry of War more often and see how it operates. Learn from the people there. Do you understand? The Ministry of War was a relatively important place. It was one of the 6 ministries and was equivalent to the modern Ministry of National Defense. Its head was the Minister of War, which was equivalent to the current Minister of National Defense. He was in charge of the selection of military officials, military personnel, military equipment, and military orders. Ning Shu immediately stepped forward and cupped his hands to accept the order. The other princesses frowned. The Empress Mother had taken a liking to the crown princess. Ning Shu felt that this was the good thing about the Empress. If she was wronged, she would give some compensation. The Prime Minister definitely couldn't be removed for the time being, but if she wanted her daughter to be wronged, she could only give some compensation. Also, the matter of the Imperial Jade Seal made the Empress feel as if a fishbone was stuck in her throat. She didn't know if it was true or if she was framed. Let's leave it at that for now. After the court, Ning Shu went to the Ministry of War. It was also beneficial to understand more about the operation of the department. The other princesses didn't interfere in the Ministry of War's affairs, but she did. However, this matter had its pros and cons. If he got too close to the Ministry of War, the Empress might think that he was forming a clique for personal gain. The Empress's thoughts were really hard to guess. Ning Shu was impartial to every official and didn't think of getting too close to any official. Although the princesses had their own people in the court, they wanted to have the right to speak in the court and have someone to speak up for them. But now, they wanted to face the Empress directly. Only by grasping the Empress's mentality and attitude was the foundation. Framing others was something that neglected the essentials. In the palace, Ni Baiwei carried a food box to the Empress's palace. Ni Baiwei's face was conflicted. Ever since the Imperial Jade Seal incident, the Empress had been calm. There was no movement at all, and she didn't have any intention of acting up. Her calmness made people tremble. The feeling of waiting was like death by 1,000 cuts. The feeling of waiting to see where her fate would lead was really too painful. Ni Baiwei could only go and test it. When Ni Baiwei arrived at the palace, she knelt down and saluted. The Empress looked at her indifferently and said, "Rise." "Empress Mother, I made some pastries." Ni Baiwei said as she opened the food box and placed the plate on the table. She said fawningly, "Please eat, Empress Mother." The Empress picked up the teacup and took a sip. She said, "How long have you been communicating with Fenjiuxuan?" Ni Baiwei was so scared that her whole body trembled. She stuttered, "Not long, really not long." "You like your brother-in-law?" the Empress asked. Her own daughter liked her other daughter's husband. As a mother, this feeling was really fucked up. The Empress's direct question made Ni Baiwei's heart beat like thunder. Her soul felt as light as a feather, as if it had left her body. This kind of question was not easy to answer. Ni Baiwei felt that facing the Empress was more terrifying than facing a strong female boss. At least the Empress wouldn't want her life, but if she answered wrong now, it would be a matter of life and death. This was a question that could lead to death. Is it very difficult to answer? If you like him, then you like him. If you don't like him, then you don't like him. The Empress was very indifferent. Ni Baiwei swallowed a mouthful of saliva, thought for a moment, and said, "I don't like him. I just pity him." "Oh, what's so pitiful about him?" The Empress raised her eyebrows. She really couldn't see what was so pitiful about Fenjiuxuan. Fenjiuxuan is married to eldest sister, but eldest sister doesn't like him. He is an all-round person. Now that he is going to waste his talent, this is a loss to the country. This kind of person should serve the country. Ni Baiwei said. The Empress laughed. Isn't there a man who is an official in the imperial court? He has a great reputation, but why doesn't he enter the imperial court? Isn't he already married to eldest sister? Shouldn't a married person stay at home? Ni Baiwei said. What does this matter have to do with you and him writing letters? Since you already know that Fenjiuxuan is married, why are you still writing letters? This was a matter of character. If one said that he was young, he would be an adult soon. He already knew everything that he should know. If one said that he was young, he already knew that he liked men. If this matter was spread out, it would simply be a disgrace to the imperial family. The family's conduct was not upright. Everyone in the world liked to listen to the imperial family's gossip and watch them make a fool of themselves. It was just like how the modern people like to watch the aristocratic family's quarrels. Chapter 21-24. I just said a few words to him. Nothing special, Ni Baiwei said. Even if she was stupid, she knew that she shouldn't speak the truth. However, Ni Baiwei was facing the Empress, who had absolute control over her life and death. The Empress wasn't stupid to deny something so obvious. If she admitted it directly, there might be a chance for things to turn around. The Empress looked at Ni Baiwei and waved her hand. I'm not hungry. Take the food away. Read more books and learn from the teacher. Learn more about human etiquette. Yes. Ni Baiwei immediately heaved a sigh of relief. The Empress frowned. Didn't she realize the seriousness of this sentence? Ignoring human etiquette wasn't serious. After saying this, Ni Baiwei had already crossed out a big mark in the Empress's heart. She used to think that little Seven was a simple girl. However, she colluded with her brother-in-law to frame her own sister. This behavior was even more disgusting than framing her own sister. Moreover, it was obvious that she was being used by Fenjiuxuan. She was addicted to men and did whatever he asked her to do. She framed her own sister and didn't feel anything at all. The more the Empress thought about it, the angrier she got. However, the Empress didn't expect that this was no longer her daughter. To Ni Baiwei, her parents and siblings were just strangers. Empress Mother, I want to leave the palace. Ni Baiwei was very worried about Fenjiuxuan. She didn't know how her sister would punish Fenjiuxuan. She didn't say a word to Fenjiuxuan in the Crown Princess residence. The Empress was speechless. Was she not obvious enough, or was this daughter really stupid? She was so stupid that the Empress didn't even have the strength to be angry. She was so angry that she laughed. Why leave the palace? I want to go out and buy something, Ni Baiwei said carefully. Didn't I tell you to learn more about human etiquette from the teacher? Are you deaf? The Empress roared. Her voice could be heard even outside the palace. Some guards shrugged their shoulders. The news of the Empress scolding Ni Baiwei would spread to the ears of people who were interested. This was a message. To some extent, it represented a certain attitude. Didn't the Empress know that there were people guarding outside the palace? After being yelled at by the Empress, Ni Baiwei was a little dazed. She took the opportunity to scramble out of the palace. The Empress rubbed her forehead. In the past, she had thought that little Seven was a good person. She was open-minded and not calculative. Looking at her now, she was a soft-hearted person. Moreover, there was no sisterly love between the two of them. Her heart was cold. For better or for worse, she had been living in the Crown Princess residence for some time. Now, she had turned around and attacked the Crown Princess. It was all because of Fenjiuxuan's words. When Ning Shu heard this news, he didn't care about human relations. This meant that Ni Baiwei wasn't a candidate for the throne in the Empress' eyes and was directly eliminated. Ning Shu smiled. His plan of injuring himself to gain the enemy's confidence was not in vain. This plan was very risky, and he might even lose himself in it. Fortunately, his usually dull and timid appearance gave him a certain chance of success. Fenjiuxuan had a pig teammate, and he wasn't afraid of a godly opponent. Ning Shu stayed in the Ministry of War every day to understand the situation there. Occasionally, the Empress would ask about some things, and Ning Shu's answers were all normal. In order to avoid being framed by others, Ning Shu was very careful. After all, she was very timid. Your Highness, the manservant by the principal husband's side said that the principal husband invites your Highness to the green bamboo courtyard for a meal, the personal maid Ning Shu said. Ning Shu put down the brush, rotated his wrist, and asked, "What's the matter?" Recently, Ning Shu had been busy in the Ministry of War. He directly left Fenjiuxuan in the courtyard and didn't care about him anymore. Now, it was Fenjiuxuan who couldn't endure it anymore. Your Highness is invited for a meal, the maid said. Ning Shu stood up and stretched his body. Okay. He should go and see Fenjiuxuan. Although Prime Minister Feng had been arranged to provide disaster relief, the Feng family's power was still there. Moreover, Ning Shu wanted to see what Fenjiuxuan wanted to do. Ning Shu arrived at Fenjiuxuan's courtyard. Fenjiuxuan had already prepared a table full of sumptuous lunch. This was showing weakness, and also meant to curry favor with him. Some people were just despicable. If he didn't teach them a lesson, they wouldn't have any scruples. Didn't Fenjiuxuan also have an affair? Saying that he had an affair was a bit serious. After all, they didn't have sex. This was a mental affair. With Fenjiuxuan's intelligence, how could he not know that this was inappropriate? Even though he knew it was inappropriate, he still did it. Ning Shu sat down. Fenjiuxuan bowed to Ning Shu. Ning Shu drank a mouthful of tea and ignored him. He looked at the pattern on the teacup and didn't say anything. Fenjiuxuan's expression was calm as he bowed. The corners of Ning Shu's lips curled up. Seeing Feng Yuxuan bow to her, it was as if she was in ancient times, a woman who still had to bow to her husband was a vassal. Although this country was ruled by women, ordinary people didn't have such a strong female superiority. Men could go out to work and support their families. Then, after Ni Baiwei came, this society became male superiority. Women could only stay at home. All the men should give Ni Baiwei a longevity card. She had successfully won the favor of all the men. Then he bowed for a while longer. The atmosphere became stagnant. The room was quiet. No one spoke. Ning Shu kept drinking tea. When he finished the pot of tea, his stomach was rumbling. Only then did Ning Shu say, "Get up." Fenjiuxuan's expression was calm as he sat below Ning Shu. He reached out his jade-like hand and poured a bowl of soup for Ning Shu. He said, "Your Highness, this is goat bone yam and red date soup. It's good for qi and blood." Ning Shu replied with an "oh." He took the bowl and smelled it. It seemed that there were no extra ingredients. He drank a mouthful. It tasted good. Since someone was willing to serve him and prepare a table full of dishes, it would be a waste not to eat. Moreover, he used the crown princess's money. He couldn't waste it. Fenjiuxuan looked at Ning Shu drinking the soup. He paused and said, "Your Highness, this is Yuxuan's fault. I didn't expect it to bring harm to the crown princess. I don't want such a thing to happen again." Ning Shu used a spoon to drink the soup. "As long as such a thing doesn't happen again, it's fine." "Thank you, Your Highness." Fenjiuxuan reached out and held Ning Shu's hand. "I'm sorry." Ning Shu raised her eyebrows and looked at Fenjiuxuan. Being held by a peerlessly handsome man, Ning Shu's eyes turned. Was Fenjiuxuan flirting with her again? Ning Shu pulled her hand away. One who offered something for no reason must be hiding evil intentions. Could it be that Fenjiuxuan decided to compromise and make wine with her? Ning Shu continued to drink the soup. Fenjiuxuan didn't care about Ning Shu's actions. He said, "We are husband and wife. Husband and wife are one. Yuxuan has never thought of harming you. Harming you won't do Yuxuan any good." Ning Shu understood. He wanted her to believe in the matter of the letters from before. He wanted her to admit that they had exchanged letters, but not that she had harmed him. Ning Shu nodded. "So it's like this. Since we are husband and wife, I naturally believe you. As if. Fen Jiuxian smiled. Like the first snow meeting the sun, all living things grew and bloomed into beautiful and fragrant flowers. Chapter 21-25. Fen Jiuxian smiled at Ning Shu, but Ning Shu just looked at him expressionlessly, his eyes indifferent. If he had really been bewitched by the beauty, Ning Shu would have used his mental energy to look at Fen Jiuxian's bones, organs, and intestines, and all the amazement would have disappeared. Looking through the appearance to see the essence. Fen Jiuxian restrained his smile, suddenly feeling that the crown princess he had married was a bit crazy. He couldn't understand what she was thinking at all. Fen Jiuxian picked up some food and placed it on Ning Shu's plate. Ning Shu always wanted to smell it before eating, and then carefully taste it, mainly because he wanted to know if there was anything inside. Fen Jiuxian saw that Ning Shu had put down his chopsticks without eating much, and asked, "Your Highness didn't eat much. Is it not to your liking?" Ning Shu said, "I drank enough water just now." The scene was very awkward. Ning Shu said, "Just say what you want to say. I don't like to beat around the bush." "Yushuan never had any intention of harming you," Fen Jiuxian said. "Oh, who was the one whose head was hung on the city gate?" Ning Shu said, "Of course I believe you. In the future, don't do such a thing that others can use against you." "Thank you." Fen Jiuxian looked at Ning Shu, his eyes glittering, reflecting a fine luster, like the ripples on the surface of the water under the sunlight. It was very enchanting. Then Ning Shu saw Fen Jiuxian's skull and white brain matter. "Well said." Ning Shu stood up and was about to leave. Fen Jiuxian called out to Ning Shu. "Your Highness, do you like to play chess?" Ning Shu, "I don't like it." Fen Jiuxian, "Then what does your Highness like?" Ning Shu, "There's nothing that I like." Fen Jiuxian, "Then Yushuan will play a song for your Highness." Ning Shu, "I don't like it. It's so miserable, as if someone in the family died. It's not as good as drums and gongs." Fen Jiuxian's hand that was loosening the jade flute from his waist stiffened. "Then Yushuan will play a cheerful song for your Highness." Ning Shu sat down. "Go ahead and brag. If you brag well, you'll be rewarded." Fen Jiuxian, "But he wasn't a singer." Fen Jiuxian began to play the jade flute. Every action of a beautiful man was beautiful. Ning Shu propped up his chin and listened to Fen Jiuxian play the flute. He played it quite well. To be honest, this was not as rhythmic as square dancing. After one song, Fen Jiuxian put down the jade flute. Ning Shu asked, "Keep playing. Why did you stop?" Fen Jiuxian now truly understood what it meant to play the lute to a cow. It was hard to find a soulmate. Even Ni Baiwei, who was only 14 years old, would praise him every time he finished playing. Her eyes were full of admiration. He would never play for this woman again. "I'm done. I'm leaving." Ning Shu stood up and walked out of the courtyard. Fen Jiuxian caught up to Ning Shu and put a woven straw hat on Ning Shu's head. "The sun is scorching. Don't burn your skin." Ning Shu asked, "You want me to stay?" After doing so many things, they all said that one must be up to no good. "Please stay," Fen Jiuxian said. "I still have things to take care of. You can continue to be grounded in the courtyard." The Empress Mother is still angry about this matter. She even scolded Little Seven for ignoring human relations. Ning Shu reached out his hand to pat Fen Jiuxian's shoulder. Fen Jiuxian subconsciously wanted to dodge, but he stopped himself. Ning Shu patted his shoulder. How could he not know that Fen Jiuxian rejected her in his heart, but he still wanted her to stay. Fen Jiuxian wanted to make herself suffer, but Ning Shu did not want to make herself suffer. If both sides were in love, they would naturally fuse together. Who the hell would want to have sex with you? Ignoring human relations. Fen Jiuxian's face turned pale. This was a serious accusation. Reputation was very important. For a princess, this accusation was very serious. If there were no accidents, she would never have the chance to become an emperor. Fenjiuxuan felt that it was a pity for Ni Baiwei. He did not expect that Ni Baiwei would be the first to be eliminated. Fenjiuxuan's heart was in a mess. He wanted to rush to Ni Baiwei and see how sad she was. He was scolded by his mother, but he could not go out now. Fenjiuxuan did not have any thoughts of tangling with Ning Shu. He only did this to make his mother feel more relaxed. His mother was implicated because of him. He had no choice but to do this. It was against his will. And the other party's rejection, in addition to Ni Baiwei's matter, made Fenjiuxuan feel dispirited. He casually said, "Your Highness, take care of your body." Then, he watched as Ning Shu left. Fenjiuxuan rubbed his forehead. How vexing. Ning Shu did not care about Fenjiuxuan's feeling of powerlessness and frustration. He sat on his bed and opened up his meridians. He had to quickly increase his strength. Her Majesty looked young, but there would always be accidents and she would die. Soon, it would be the royal hunt. She did not have any strength and could not even draw a bow. How could she hunt? Blood beads came out of his pores and his blood vessels bulged. Ning Shu clenched his teeth and finally opened up his last blocked meridian. Once it was opened, his body formed a cycle. His meridians allowed spiritual energy to flow without obstruction and connected to his dantian. He felt as light as a feather and was about to ascend to immortality. He had finally made it through, and now that he had some strength, he had some confidence. Everyone else could practice martial arts, and those who were good at martial arts could easily take on 10 people at once. He was the only one who was weak. Every time the royal hunt was held, it would be a joke. The Empress could not bear to look at it. This time, with some strength, he could protect himself. Especially now that Her Majesty had arranged for her to be in the Ministry of War, her sisters would definitely be jealous. If an assassin appeared, she would die in the hunting field. She would be dead if she counted on the guards to save her. The Crown Princess's residence had guards with high martial arts. However, those guards could not enter the hunting field. Ning Shu wiped the blood off his body. He did not lose so much blood in vain. He sat down and cultivated. He felt traces of spiritual energy flowing through his meridians and into his dantian. However, when he cultivated, his meridians felt like they were being pricked by needles. After all, meridians were fragile. Moreover, the spiritual energy was very gentle. If he absorbed the power of fire, his meridians would probably be burned until they were distorted. Ni Bingyan's meridians were not only blocked, but they were also fragile. Moreover, her meridians were not the same as those of ordinary people. If there was one less meridian, it would receive less spiritual energy and reduce the absorption of spiritual energy. She was truly a good-for-nothing. If she was not the crown princess, being a prince would be a very good result. However, she was crowned as the crown princess. No, even if she was a prince, she could still be slaughtered by Fenjiuxuan. Unless Ni Baiwei did not transmigrate. After Fenjiuxuan ascended the throne, Her Majesty's daughter was slaughtered. Almost all of the Ni family's imperial family were killed. In order to prevent a counterattack, as long as there was a transmigrated woman, whether the person was the crown princess or not, they would be killed. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.